After remaining in a coma for 3 years, when he finally woke up, he discovered that the game he had mastered by spending more than a decade in it had now become reality. Now, millions of people were desperately searching for that mysterious man, God Jinwoo, who was said to hold the key to conquering the tower. The only problem was that God Jinwoo already existed, and he was none other than himself. While the entire world was busy trying to find out his identity, he was quietly focusing on making himself stronger, increasing his influence, and giving his family the life they deserved. But with countless people after him in search of the truth, the biggest question was whether he would be able to keep his identity hidden, or if the world would finally find out who the real God Jinwoo was. The story began with an angel hovering high in the sky, golden light spreading from its wings. Standing near a fallen monster, an armored man stepped forward and, calling all their efforts futile, said that no matter how much they struggled, everything was useless. Standing with a golem behind him and a glowing interface in front of him, the protagonist announced that he would soon clear the 100th floor and identified himself as God Jinwoo, the #1 ranker of the Battle of Summoners. This game, popularly known as BOS, was almost dead, its popularity practically non-existent, and its difficulty was so high that now only veteran players were left in it. While some people questioned his ranking or called him a hacker, others explained that he was a free-to-play player who had repeatedly set transcendent records and had become a legend inside the game. While the audience was reacting to his achievements, a message from Baek arrived, asking if he was still working on the 99th floor, and God Jinwoo replied to them that he had cleared it a long time ago and asked if there was any problem, which further proved why most rankers also respected him. At the same time, he looked at the screen filled with in-game currency and apologized for being busy. Holding the phone in his hand under the glowing sky, he smiled faintly and admitted that after clearing this stage, he would quit gaming forever because his real life was already falling apart. He thought that for the past 10 years, he had only been immersed in games. He never went to college and could not even find a proper job, and even though his parents had never openly complained, he felt that they were troubled because of him. Deciding to change his life, he promised himself that after leaving the dead game, he would bring everything back on the right track, because at the age of 24, he felt that the time had come to start living like a responsible human being. While thinking about the future, a glowing purple arrow suddenly passed close to his face. His eyes widened and he immediately turned toward the attack because he wanted to give God Jinwoo's story a proper ending. Above him, 2 angelic archers were readying glowing purple arrows, and seeing them attack again, he said that he would clear this round and leave the game forever. Without delay, he opened the summon window and started selecting creatures from the floating interface. Meanwhile, Baek thought he must be busy, while Rachel reminded everyone that during difficult battles, God Jinwoo rarely looked at the chat window. A few moments later, a massive white whale emerged from a glowing magic circle. Right then, God Jinwoo activated its ultimate skill and called upon the legendary summon. The battle was ongoing when Rachel mentioned that if he reached the 100th floor now, it would be exactly 10 years since he first started playing the game. At the same time, one of the angelic warriors shot a glowing purple arrow toward him. A rain of arrows started coming toward him, but with the help of the white whale, God Jinwoo extended his hand and created a massive water shield that blocked the attack. However, due to the continuously colliding blows, he was forced to grit his teeth. Seeing this fight, Genos called it complete madness, while Sugoi admitted that he could not leave the game without seeing the end of the 100th floor. A loud explosion shook the entire battlefield, and when the dust cleared, the angelic warriors looked down in surprise. The next moment, the torsos of both were sliced through, and blood scattered in the air. With one hand extended and controlling the water beneath the white whale hovering above, God Jinwoo calmly watched the result. This display of his impressed the audience even more. Where Sugoi praised him, saying that he never disappoints, Baek mentioned an important announcement. Hearing this, God Jinwoo turned around and right then, a massive dragon appeared in front of him. That giant creature opened its mouth and started gathering fire, while Baek mentioned the rumors that as soon as the 100th floor was cleared, a new world would open. Before God Jinwoo could reply, the dragon shot a massive fireball toward him. Seeing the attack, his eyes widened for a moment, but he immediately summoned the blue dragon. A massive water dragon rose from the waves and shot a fierce stream of water directly toward the incoming fire. Meanwhile, Baek kept wondering if the entire structure of the game would change after the 100th floor was cleared, while Rachel called this announcement a joke that the developers never expected to come true. The collision of fire and water created a fierce vortex in which lightning also flashed. Standing amidst the exploding elements, God Jinwoo endured the collision, while Baek jokingly began to imagine a world where reality itself turned into the world of summoners. A few moments later, a massive explosion engulfed the entire battlefield. Then finally, the message everyone was waiting for appeared. Looking at his phone, he saw the notification confirming that the 100th floor of the Tower of Trials had been cleared. Filled with joy, he raised both hands in the air and shouted that he had finally done it. Laughing uncontrollably, he began to celebrate his victory, while the people standing around looked at him and thought that perhaps he had lost his mind. Regardless of them, he pressed the phone to his cheek, and tears began to flow from his eyes. Because after a full 10 years, Baek Jinwoo had finally cleared the 100th floor and now he could quit the game. Still, before leaving forever, he decided that he would definitely show his achievement to the other old players. As he started typing rapidly on his phone, a man standing nearby saw all this and asked what on earth was going on. Still holding his phone, the protagonist suddenly noticed a blue light spreading in the sky above him. When he looked up, a massive blue panel appeared across the entire sky, announcing that the 100th floor of the Tower of Trials had been cleared, and people around him stopped on the streets to look at the sky in amazement. Before anyone could understand anything, another message appeared stating that the beta testing period had ended, and seeing people asking questions in surprise, the protagonist could only stare at the sky, wondering why the game's interface was suddenly appearing in the real world. A few moments later, countless red scrolls started falling from the sky. Passers-by began to pick them up in surprise, while a little boy looked closely at one of them and asked what it actually was. After a while, a glowing instruction appeared in front of him, telling him to tear the summoning scroll. Taking it as part of an event, the boy smiled and prepared to follow the instruction. A girl standing nearby also agreed with him and told him to try it out. As soon as the protagonist realized what they were about to do, he panicked and shouted at them to stop, but by then it was too late. The boy tore the scroll, and an explosion of fire immediately burst out from inside it. Chaos erupted everywhere, and at the same time, a massive blue message appeared again, announcing that a new world was being created. Seeing this, the protagonist froze in shock. Within a short time, massive monsters began to appear throughout the city. A massive stone golem stood among collapsing buildings, while winged creatures flew in the sky and countless monsters spread onto the streets below. Unable to believe what he was seeing, he could only say that this was impossible. Just then, someone's terrified scream was heard from nearby. When he turned around, there was a stampede everywhere, and people were running to save their lives. The next time he regained consciousness, he was lying on a destruction-filled road because a truck had hit him during the chaos. People around were running toward him, shouting for help, while blood was spreading near his head, and some people were telling others to quickly call an ambulance. Barely remaining conscious, he cursed the game one last time and then fainted. Nearby, his broken phone lay on the ground, on which the message that a new world was being created was still visible. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself on a hospital bed surrounded by medical equipment, with his parents sitting next to him. At the same time, a news broadcast was discussing the International Player League and criticizing South Korea's poor performance, while experts emphasized the need to acquire powerful summons. As his fingers moved slightly, his mother immediately noticed it. The apple and knife fell from her hand, and she immediately started calling her husband, while other people ran to call the doctor. A few moments later, Jinwoo finally regained consciousness. After being asleep for so long, the first thing he saw was the sky spreading outside the hospital window. After he woke up completely, his parents began to tell him everything that had happened while he was unconscious. Hearing their words, he was completely shocked. A full 3 years had passed since that accident. As if this was not enough, just then a small stone golem nearby started raising its hand. His father explained that it was their summon, and now helped them in loading and unloading delivery packages. Hearing this, Jinwoo finally accepted that this was not a dream. Meanwhile, a broadcast showed the world's #1 ranker, Rachel, who announced that the 5 emperors were waiting for Baek Jinwoo and were trying their best to find him. Watching this report from the hospital bed, Jinwoo quickly understood that they were talking about him. As the broadcast continued, he confirmed that the Baek Jinwoo they were looking for was indeed his in-game identity. Remembering Rachel from the days of the Battle of Summoners, he immediately recognized her as one of the One Heaven 5 emperors. At the same time, a blue interface suddenly appeared in front of him and asked if he wanted to start the tutorial. Unable to hold back his laughter, Jinwoo admitted that the world of the Battle of Summoners had truly become reality. Although his mother told him to rest first, Jinwoo flatly refused. He explained that he needed to adapt to this new world as quickly as possible and assured his parents that his body felt perfectly fine. Even though he still did not have complete information and could not understand how much the world had changed, his confidence did not waver at all. After all, whenever it came to this game, he had always been among the very best players. After being discharged from the hospital, Jinwoo returned home and immediately started gathering information about everything that had happened in the past 3 years. Reading articles related to Baek Jinwoo, Rachel, and the Altered World, he found out that players, battles, raids, dungeons, and the Tower of Trials had now become a part of people's daily lives. Over time, humans had learned to live with summons, and life moved on. Still, Jinwoo believed that no one else had the experience of this game compared to him. Having full confidence in his skills, he stood up from the chair and extended his hand toward the floating interface. With this, he decided that the time to start had come. The system immediately confirmed the start of the tutorial. Stepping into the tutorial area, Jinwoo looked around and said in a low voice that just as he thought, there was no one else present there besides him. To avoid any trouble, Jinwoo reached a deserted park before starting the tutorial. He did not know what kind of summon was going to appear, so he felt it would be safer to be alone. Holding 2 low-grade summoning scrolls in his hand, he smiled and admitted that now everything really felt like reality. Still, he was inwardly hoping to get something useful. While preparing to summon, he remembered one of the biggest problems of the Battle of Summoners. Even a player like Baek Jinwoo, who was known as Ilchin, could get into big trouble upon receiving a bad summon because the game's pull rates were extremely terrible. The statistics themselves bore witness to this. With a low-grade summoning scroll, the probability of getting an F-rank summon was 94%, an E-rank was 5%, and a D-rank was only 1%. Sweating in nervousness, Jinwoo gripped the scroll tightly and started praying for anything useful. At that time, he would have gladly accepted even an E-rank summon. With this, he tore the scroll and activated the low-grade summoning scroll. For a moment, it felt as if nothing had happened at all. Then, blue light began to emerge from the torn scroll. Jinwoo was just wondering how summons actually appear when fierce blue lightning burst from the scroll and began to flash around his hands. He stepped back in panic because that energy had suddenly exploded outward. A few moments later, a notification appeared stating that player Baek Jinwoo had acquired something. To his complete surprise, the summon that appeared before him was an X-rank wind fairy. Jinwoo's eyes immediately widened. He did not even remember that a rank like X ever existed in the game. The tiny fairy rubbed her eyes sleepily, looked around, and then suddenly cried out in surprise. Hovering in the air in front of Jinwoo, she asked excitedly if she had really been summoned. On the other hand, Jinwoo was more surprised by the fact that a summon was talking to him. Confused, he leaned a little closer and asked if her name was Ramba. The fairy immediately identified herself as a wind fairy, but upon hearing the name Ramba, the expression on her face changed. According to her, the only human who called her Ramba was God Jinwoo. Realizing this, she immediately asked if he was God Jinwoo. Before Jinwoo could even reply properly, she came flying straight to his face, crying and started shouting that she had missed him so much. Seeing the fairy clinging to his cheek, Jinwoo finally remembered her. In the game, she was initially an E-rank wind fairy, but when her hidden potential was unlocked and she was nurtured properly, she became extremely powerful due to her tremendous attack speed buffs. It was because of training her for such a long time that Jinwoo had named her Ramba. The matter became even stranger when he remembered that this summon had been removed during a bug patch in the first year of the game. Looking at Ramba sitting on his shoulder, Jinwoo remembered that the developers had banned her use due to balance issues. At that time, he was extremely angry because the summon he had spent a whole year raising was removed without any compensation. When he looked at her status window, he found out that she was now classified as an X-rank isolated summon. One word written in it immediately caught his attention: isolated. Before he could ask anything further, Ramba suddenly started crying. She explained that she had been dragged to a strange place and kept imprisoned there for a very long time from where there was no way out. Calling him God Jinwoo, she begged him never to leave her again. Trying to calm her down, Jinwoo stopped her and asked who had imprisoned her there. But as soon as she tried to answer, she started sweating in nervousness. Her words became tangled, and within a short time she held her head in pain. According to Ramba, someone had placed a restriction on her memories. Whenever she tried to remember certain things, an unbearable pain would start in her head. Hearing this, Jinwoo told her to tell only what she still remembered. Apologizing, Ramba said that she did not have much to tell, but what she told was shocking. She explained that summoning isolated summons was previously impossible, no matter how hard players tried. Jinwoo's attention immediately went to a specific point. When she said summons, did it mean there were more summons present? Ramba immediately confirmed this. Although they were never kept together, and she did not know their identities, she was absolutely sure that many isolated summons existed. Leaves were blowing in the forest, and Jinwoo plunged into deep thought. He remembered that there were about 10 such summons in the game that had suddenly disappeared after being declared as bugs. The more he thought about it, the more unbelievable all this seemed. If all those disappeared summons were actually X-rank isolated summons, it meant that his entire understanding of the game was incomplete. At the same time, another voice stated that it had once again heard the call of a low-grade summoning scroll, and also said that tearing the scroll became an opportunity for them. Hearing this, Jinwoo became alert. He looked at the pieces of the torn scroll lying below and understood an important fact. This reaction had occurred only when he had torn the summoning scroll with his own hands. With this, he reached a conclusion. It was highly possible that he was the only person in the world to acquire X-rank summons. To test this theory of his, he picked up another low-grade summoning scroll and tore it. As blue energy burst out from inside it, he began to wonder if every scroll he used from now on would yield an X-rank summon. But this time the result was not so spectacular. A giant hairy gorilla appeared in front of him, and the system announced that he had received an F-rank hairy gorilla. Looking at the gorilla standing in front of him, a drop of sweat appeared on Jinwoo's forehead, and he deduced that perhaps this was not the case. Since this was only an F-rank summon, he concluded that the probability of getting an X-rank was completely random. After thinking a little, he understood that to increase the probability of getting X-rank summons, he would have to use as many summoning scrolls as possible. If he succeeded in gathering all of them, he could perhaps become even more powerful than during the days of Ilchin. As he called out to Ramba, she immediately replied with enthusiasm and addressed him as God Jinwoo. Jinwoo immediately told her not to do so and told her to call him just Jinwoo. Hearing this, Ramba fell into confusion and started asking why. Jinwoo explained that because of the 5 emperors, the name of God Jinwoo had spread across the entire world. Even though he had the best information and experience, he did not know whether this 3-year gap would work against him in the future. If people found out that God Jinwoo could now handle even X-rank summons, he could easily become a target of envy and jealousy. A short while later, several birds suddenly flew toward the sky, as if frightened by something far away. Feeling the sudden restlessness, Jinwoo's body tensed up and he began to wonder what this strange feeling actually was. Before he could think of anything else, the gorilla threw its head back and let out a fierce roar, causing Ramba to back away in midair. At the same time, a blue portal appeared near him, and the system announced that the next stage was being initiated. Looking at the swirling portal, Jinwoo could not believe it. Just then, another message arrived stating that a beginner dungeon had been created. Even after clearing countless dungeons in the past, he could not stop himself from muttering curses because reality was completely different from a game. Trying to calm himself down, Jinwoo admitted that he was truly scared. Still, he reminded himself that he did not have to fight directly, and this was just a tutorial dungeon. After this, the system recognized him as player Baek Jinwoo. Along with this, Jinwoo moved toward the portal while Ramba and the gorilla followed behind him. The system was continuously telling him to enter, so he decided that he simply had to adapt to this changed world. A while later, he found himself standing inside a dark, cave-like tunnel. Looking around cautiously, he asked if he had really come inside a dungeon, and admitted that this place looked quite scary. The system confirmed that player Baek Jinwoo had entered the beginner dungeon. Seeing this notification, Jinwoo swallowed nervously and understood that everything had now begun. Just then, 2 summon cards appeared before him with Ice Golem and Gargle written on them. The system stated that a team of summons is required for dungeon battles, while both creatures began to display a fight right before his eyes. After this, 5 empty card slots appeared along with a message, stating that the maximum team limit was 5 summons. Then the system asked if he wanted to include the Wind Fairy X-rank and Hairy Gorilla F-rank in the team. Jinwoo knew that most players usually filled all 5 slots to increase the probability of clearing a dungeon. Still, if the right strategy was adopted, entering with just 2 summons was not impossible. After all, he had tried such methods not thousands, but perhaps tens of thousands of times because the entire strategy was already prepared in his mind. Without delay, he selected yes. Ramba and the gorilla were immediately summoned inside the cave, and Jinwoo began trying to recall what kind of monsters usually appeared in the tutorial dungeon. But before he could complete his thought, a growl echoed in the cave. A short while later, a wolf came forward, identified as a starving grey wolf, and an objective also appeared before him stating that he had to escape the cave by defeating the wolf. Seeing that it was only an F-rank grey wolf, Jinwoo breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, golden energy gathered around him and turned into a protective barrier. Checking the system, he saw that the player protection system was fully implemented. Still, this was reality, not a game. Immediately, a warning appeared stating that if he was attacked without the protective shield, it would result in his death. Hearing this, Jinwoo's body automatically tensed up because if he failed here, the matter was not going to be limited just to a game over screen. Showing its sharp teeth as the wolf surged toward him, Jinwoo immediately ordered the hairy gorilla to attack. The gorilla rushed forward but suddenly stopped, and seeing this, Jinwoo made a face, thinking it was too slow. Still, he had expected exactly this beforehand. Without any hesitation, he called out to Ramba. With a bright smile, Ramba rushed forward swiftly, and spinning her staff amidst the swirling winds, activated a skill that increased the summon's attack speed. As the green energy wrapped around the gorilla, its eyes sharpened and its entire aura changed. After receiving the buff, the gorilla lunged forward with an angry roar while Ramba kept supporting it from behind. Seeing all this, Jinwoo smiled with satisfaction. This was indeed what was expected from Ramba. But just then the grey wolf suddenly leaped forward, spreading its claws, and seeing this, Jinwoo stared at it in surprise, wondering if this thing used to be this big even in the game. Watching the fight, Jinwoo kept telling himself that the first thrall could not lose. According to all his information and statistics, such an outcome was impossible. Still, this was reality, and reality always contained countless unknown variables. Surrounded by green energy, the gorilla rushed forward swiftly, while the grey wolf also lunged directly toward it. The two collided head-on, and with the collision, a sharp spray of blood burst out. Jinwoo was shocked when the wolf immediately clamped its jaws around the gorilla's neck and brought it down to the ground, while the summon began to roar in pain. Seeing the situation worsen, Jinwoo immediately called out to Ramba. Ramba closed her eyes tightly and, spinning her staff with all her might, shouted that she was already using her full power. At that moment, the gorilla's punch, wrapped in swirling wind energy, swung forward and landed directly on the wolf, causing it to bounce back as blood poured from its mouth. The wolf fell onto its back, but Ramba did not stop there. Saying that it was now time for the final blow, she raised her staff, and powerful wind energy began to gather around her body, while glowing magic circles emerged behind her. Under the influence of the spell, the gorilla leaped into the air with a roar and then crashed onto the wolf with such force that even the ground cracked. After this, it unleashed a continuous rain of punches filled with the power of wind and kept beating the wolf repeatedly until a massive cloud of dust spread throughout the cave. Jinwoo watched all this nervously, while Ramba hovered in the air near him, panting from exhaustion. When the dust finally cleared, the grey wolf lay motionless on the ground, while the badly injured gorilla was still standing. The gorilla immediately beat its chest and let out a roar of victory. Only then did Jinwoo breathe a sigh of relief. Ramba began to hop around him happily, celebrating their victory. Just then, a notification from the system arrived, stating that he had received 2 lesser strength runes. Looking at the reward, only one thought came to Jinwoo's mind: he had survived. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, a girl was happily counting a stack of cash and celebrating earning 200,000 won in a single day. That girl was Baek Jinwoo's younger sister, Baek Arjun. Since the world changed 3 years ago, she had been working as a rune farming player. By repeatedly going into low-level dungeons and selling valuable runes to promising players, she had established a stable source of income. After Jinwoo's accident, she herself had become a player, and by luck, she had obtained a C-rank summon from an intermediate-grade summoning scroll. Thanks to her C-rank shadow elf, she had been earning money through rune farming without any major trouble. While managing her earnings, she received a phone call from Jinwoo. "Oppa," she said as she picked up the phone, asking if he had finally been discharged from the hospital. Jinwoo replied in the affirmative, but immediately changed the subject, asking if she was a rune hawker, as their father had mentioned. Hearing this, Arjun flared up and insisted on being called a rune farming player. After correcting his wording half-heartedly, Jinwoo came to the real issue and asked if she knew the location of a synthesis shop. The existence of such places was tied to player zones. When the Towers of Trials appeared across the world, players needed special facilities for summon-related activities. For this reason, player zones were built around the towers, containing everything from dungeons to synthesis shops and enhancement centers. A short while later, the two siblings met at a cafe. Arjun mentioned that in Korea, the Towers of Trials had appeared in only 2 places, Jamsil Tower and Hongdae Tower. Because of this, player zones existed only around those areas. Thinking for a moment, Jinwoo admitted that this made sense because since all facilities were built for tower climbers, building them near the towers was much more convenient. Afterwards, their conversation shifted towards summons. Intrigued, Arjun asked whether he had obtained an F-rank summon or an E-rank. Jinwoo replied in a very casual manner that he had obtained both. Hearing this, Arjun's face lit up, and she mentioned that the drop rate for E-rank summons was only 5%. Jinwoo smiled and pretended to accept her praise, but inwardly apologized for lying to his younger sister. Then, changing the subject, he said that he wanted to align himself with the system as quickly as possible and needed Arjun's help for this. He also promised that he would give her pocket money later. Arjun immediately reminded him that she earned far more money than him, but Jinwoo laughed it off, saying that no one knows what will happen in the future, and who knows, one day he might become the greatest player in the world. Arjun immediately dismissed this idea. According to her, people always talked like that, but people like Rachel and Genos were at the top of the world for a reason. They were chosen geniuses, and ordinary humans could never match them. Jinwoo just smiled and asked if that was really so. Before Arjun could reply, he stood up and told her to stop worrying and just show him around. After all, he wanted to see with his own eyes what a player zone actually looked like. Along with this, the massive structure of the player zone standing in front of them appeared, illuminating the night sky. Walking along the city streets at night, Arjun suddenly asked which summon Jinwoo had received. When he casually replied that he had gotten a wind fairy, Arjun's curiosity was instantly piqued. It was only natural to want to see a summon whose name she had never heard before. Jinwoo immediately refused, but this irritated Arjun even more. After all, they were siblings, so she could not understand why he was hiding so many things. To turn the situation in his favor, Jinwoo said that she should show her summon first. Arjun confidently agreed and warned him not to be too shocked. The next moment, a C-rank shadow elf appeared before them. Jinwoo stared at it silently. Perplexed by his dull reaction, Arjun got annoyed and reminded him that summons of C-rank and above were considered noble-tier summons. Jinwoo just nodded, though inwardly he could not bring himself to be impressed by something of that level. Curious, he tried to greet the shadow elf and even asked if it could speak Korean. The summon remained completely silent. Arjun looked at him as if he had lost his mind and asked what on earth he was doing. Jinwoo said he was just introducing himself and asking her precious summon to take care of Arjun, but this explanation was of no use either. Arjun immediately stated that summons could not speak anyway. Hearing this, Jinwoo froze. If summons could not speak, then what about Ramba? He vividly remembered their first meeting. As if answering his thoughts, Ramba suddenly clung to his face and began to complain loudly about how much she had missed him. Jinwoo just stared at her with a blank expression. Could it be true that summons could never speak? Arjun absolutely did not believe his words and reminded him that no one had ever heard of a talking summon. Jinwoo tried to find the reason himself and began to think that perhaps after reality replaced the game, all humanoid summons had started speaking. But whatever his theory might be, Arjun's interest was in seeing his summon. She demanded once again that he show it. Jinwoo immediately refused. After seeing her reaction to an ordinary C-rank summon, he felt it was better to keep Ramba hidden for the time being. Ignoring her complaints, he told her to focus on showing him around the player zone. Having no other choice, Arjun followed behind him while protesting along the way. Not much time passed before Jinwoo suddenly stopped in his tracks. Looking at the massive area glowing with neon lights before him, he could not believe his eyes. Is this really Jamsil World? He wondered. Arjun explained that everything had changed after the Tower of Trials appeared. The old facilities were removed because no one wanted to visit an amusement park with a massive, terrifying tower standing right next to it. Jinwoo could not stop himself from saying that this made the place look even more exciting. Arjun immediately reminded him that real dungeons had appeared right in the middle of the area, so ordinary people could no longer consider it a place of entertainment. Hearing this, Jinwoo half-heartedly admitted she was right. Still, seeing the places he had previously seen only in the game now real before him, his excitement kept growing. To tell the truth, he found all this extremely thrilling. As they walked, his gaze fell upon a marketplace where players were trading various kinds of items, and he asked about it. Arjun explained that everything from summoning scrolls to runes could be bought and sold there. This sight reminded him of the old days when he used to open countless scrolls and runes with Baekjin. Pointing toward an information booth nearby, Arjun mentioned that beginners could get almost all the necessary information right there. Then she advised that he should enroll in the academy run by the player headquarters to learn the basics properly. Jinwoo immediately refused. He did not feel there was anything there that he needed to learn. After all, he was going to stay right here and raise his level. Still, Arjun could not hide her worry. She softly asked if he would really be okay alone. Jinwoo reassured her and told her to return home first. When Arjun realized that he wanted to walk around alone and see everything, she reluctantly agreed to his request. Even as she watched him leave, the feeling did not leave Arjun's mind that something had indeed changed about her brother. His behavior had been strange ever since he regained consciousness, as if another person had entered inside him. Still, she thought that perhaps after such a major event, he was trying to adapt himself to the new environment, so for now she could only keep an eye on him from a distance. Before leaving, she called out to him one last time, telling him not to overexert himself and to definitely call her if he needed any help. Jinwoo smiled, waved his hand, and said he understood. After Arjun left, he reached a quiet corridor illuminated by neon lights and looked around cautiously. After making sure that no one was visible nearby, he thought to himself that no one should be coming here. When he was absolutely sure that the surroundings were empty, Jinwoo immediately called out Ramba. The tiny fairy came flying to him with a happy smile, but before she could speak, Jinwoo caught her and placed his finger on her nose. Completely confused, Ramba asked what had happened. Jinwoo looked at her with a serious gaze and told her that she was no longer allowed to speak outside. Naturally, Ramba wanted to know why. Jinwoo quickly explained that they could not risk anyone finding out about her unique ability, so from now on she could only speak inside dungeons. When he was sure that Ramba understood, Jinwoo finally breathed a sigh of relief and turned his attention to a much more pressing problem: money. Seeing only 12,501 present in his account, his heart became even heavier. If he had to become stronger by clearing dungeons, he first needed some capital. The more he thought about it, the worse the situation seemed. Even after spending years in the hospital due to the accident, this was the only amount left with him. Working part-time to raise money like before would take too much time. Frustrated, he hid his face in both hands. Some people might advise him to ask his parents for money, but for Jinwoo, this was not an option at all. His mother and father were already exhausting themselves to the limit just to bear the family's expenses. The very thought of depending on them more made him feel ashamed. If he did that, he would be no different from a parasite. After composing himself, Jinwoo gripped the phone tightly and finalized his decision. Even if he had to start everything from zero, he would definitely find a way. After all, there was a reason why God Jinwoo had reached the top of everyone. He was an F2P ranker. Despite the game's brutal pay-to-win system and players spending millions of won, he had reached the very top without spending a single penny. So why would the real world be any different? Deciding not to give up, he vowed that no matter what happened, he would reach the top again. Just then, his phone suddenly vibrated. A notification arrived showing that 500,000 won had been deposited into his account. Jinwoo froze completely in surprise. For a moment, he thought that perhaps this was some kind of beginner benefit, but the accompanying message immediately revealed the truth. This money had been sent by his mother. She had written that she knew he was trying his best and sent the money because she was sure that he would never ask for an allowance himself. After reading the message, only one word came out of Jinwoo's mouth: Mom. Instantly, all the years his mother had spent sitting by his bed in the hospital flashed before his eyes. He remembered her comforting voice, her soft touch, and her continuous prayers for him to wake up healthy. Filled with emotion, Jinwoo covered his eyes and thanked her in his heart, while also making a promise to himself. One day he would definitely succeed, and when that day came, he would make sure that his entire family would never have to worry about money again. Having strengthened his resolve, Jinwoo focused on the future again. Other people had been continuously growing stronger over the past 3 years while he had fallen behind. Therefore, if he had to match them, every second was precious. To become the best, he needed materials. To get materials, he had to clear dungeons, and to clear dungeons effectively, he first needed a proper team. Without losing time, he bought a summoning scroll and opened it. As a result, he received 3 low-grade summoning scrolls and several new summons. The first was an F-rank sludge. The second was an F-rank herd butterfly. The third was an E-rank poison lizard. Jinwoo was quite happy to see the poison lizard because Ramba was also roughly equivalent to an E-rank summon, meaning that in just 5 pulls, he had beaten the 5% chance twice. Not only that, the poison lizard was also known for its good cost-effectiveness. As far as the sludge was concerned, Jinwoo openly admitted that he would keep it only for a short time and replace it later. After organizing everything, Jinwoo finalized his current team. His plan was extremely straightforward: pull summons, equip runes if needed, clear dungeons, farm resources, level up his summons, and then keep repeating this process. This was the very foundation of the entire growth system. Fortunately, grinding was something he was never afraid of. In fact, he actually liked it. If he were to eventually gather all 10 X-rank summons one day, then even S-rank teams and the 100th floor of the Tower of Trials would no longer be obstacles for him. With this goal in mind, he announced that finding the remaining X-rank summons would be his top priority. Now that all preparations were complete, it was finally time for the real challenge to begin. Taking out his phone, Jinwoo began searching for a dungeon. When this world used to be just a mobile game, entering a dungeon was as simple as tapping a stage icon. But in the real world, things were obviously not that easy. Curious to know how this process actually worked now, he kept checking the map while walking through the player zone. Then suddenly his eyes widened and a drop of sweat appeared on his cheek. In the middle of the crowded area, Jinwoo abruptly stopped and shouted, asking what on earth was going on. Despite having his phone in hand, he was clearly panicked and said that since he had a summon, that should have been enough. Ramba quickly explained that today's lesson was about dungeon access, and merely having a summon did not grant permission to enter a dungeon. When Jinwoo asked why he could not just go straight inside, Ramba explained that dungeon gates appear suddenly anywhere across the country, and their difficulty is measured by the energy radiating from them. But the bad news for him was that the rules had changed recently. Now, no matter how easy a dungeon was, only officially registered players could enter it. The barrier present at the entrance clearly proved this fact. Realizing that his timing could not be any worse, Jinwoo sat down with his head bowed and cursed his misfortune, wondering why he had to wake up exactly when this law had changed. After a while, Ramba lightly touched him from behind and told him with a smile not to lose heart. Looking at her, a faint smile finally appeared on Jinwoo's face. He affectionately patted Ramba's head and thanked her, making her bloom with joy. Still, the problem remained exactly where it was, and Jinwoo plunged into deep thought once again. Later that night, Arjun called him and asked when he was returning home. She also mentioned that their mother wanted to know what he wished to eat for dinner. Instead of replying immediately, Jinwoo asked if she already knew about the new registration rule. Confused, Arjun asked what he was talking about, but upon hearing his words, she remembered that players now had to register before entering dungeons. When Jinwoo jokingly accused her of hiding this fact from him, Arjun immediately denied it, insisting she had truly forgotten. As the conversation progressed, Arjun explained that this rule was quite new because too many people were losing their lives inside the dungeons, forcing the government to intervene. Hearing this, Jinwoo was shocked and asked if the number of deaths was truly that high. Arjun explained that the situation had become quite uncontrollable. Now people had to get permission before going into dungeons, and the whole process included several things like tests, evaluations, and registration. Although Jinwoo felt that this was just a way to limit the number of players, Arjun said that the government had its own reasons. If everyone rushed to become a player out of greed, it could destabilize the entire society. She then mentioned that a ranking system also existed, where the rankings of the top 100 players in the country and the world were released every year. However, their country was nowhere to be seen in the global rankings. Arjun jokingly added that if the legendary god Jinwoo ever showed up, their country's ranking would instantly skyrocket. Hearing this, Jinwoo could only give an awkward smile, and then he ended the call. After putting the phone down, he stood silently for a while. For now, his current setup was sufficient, so he decided to rest for the day. The next morning, while his mother was making breakfast and his father was reading the newspaper, Jinwoo came out unusually early, fully dressed to go outside. When his mother asked why he was awake at 6:00 a.m., he replied that he had to leave early. She asked him to at least take some rice balls along, but while putting on his shoes, Jinwoo politely declined. Right before stepping out of the door, he suddenly stopped and called out to his parents. Turning toward them with a slight smile, he said that until now he had only shown them his shortcomings and apologized for it, thanking them from the bottom of his heart. Without waiting for them to reply, he left the house. His sudden words left both of them astonished. Even his father awkwardly rubbed the back of his neck and said the boy was making the atmosphere strange. Meanwhile, his mother began to worry whether Jinwoo would be okay. However, his father tried to comfort her by saying that the government now provides safety training to players as well. Even after Jinwoo left, she kept standing near the window, silently praying for his safety. This was an era where any human could become a player. However, South Korea was drawing people's attention for a completely different reason. Among all countries in the world, the rate of deaths occurring inside dungeons there was unusually high. The reason for this was surprisingly simple. Many players fell victim to greed-driven main character syndrome and began to view themselves as the hero of a fantasy world. Due to these misconceptions, countless people challenged dungeons that were far more dangerous than their capabilities and ultimately lost their lives. Foreign media also frequently reported on this situation, stating that South Korea had lost many talented gamers in this era. Some analysts even cited this as one of the reasons why the country remained at the bottom of the rankings. News of young people dying inside dungeons continued to increase. A broadcast reported that recently Mr. Kwon and 4 others had died during a dungeon expedition. Standing in the crowd and watching this news on his phone, Jinwoo was thinking that so many deaths occurred simply because people succumbed to their delusions. Looking at the people standing in the long line, Jinwoo thought that perhaps he had no right to judge anyone else. After all, for the past 10 years, he himself had been obsessed with this very game. However, he still found all of this a bit pathetic. When his turn finally came, the clerk called the next person, and Jinwoo immediately stepped forward. After submitting his application, he was soon told that his registration was complete. Following this, he asked exactly how many people were going to receive player qualifications. When he found out that only 50 people who passed the final exam would attain player status, his body automatically tensed up because more than 1,000 people were standing in line right behind him. Still, he quickly brushed this thought out of his mind. Walking through the corridor, he bowed his head and began to think that if he could not even pass this, would he truly be worthy of being called Ilchin? Meanwhile, at a nearby cafe, examiners were reviewing a mountain of applications and discussing how difficult it would be to select only 50 people from such a large group. One of them, headquarters examiner Park Chung-seok, sat comfortably with a drink in hand, saying that if they really want to find talented people, they should recruit more. But before their discussion could go any further, the wall of the cafe suddenly exploded inward. Debris and dust flew everywhere. Shocked by the sudden attack, Chung-seok immediately asked what had happened. Just then, someone called out his name directly. A few moments later, a man in a suit appeared there, accompanied by a massive orc, a floating eyeball monster in the air, and a horned beast. With a sarcastic smile, the man said that even after killing all his men, Chung-seok looked quite relaxed. Seeing him, Chung-seok understood who was in front of him. He merely muttered that this bastard had gone completely insane. Without wasting a moment, Chung-seok summoned his creatures, and thick roots burst forth from the ground. Along with them, a massive tree-like humanoid, a red bat-like monster, and a wolf surrounded by fire appeared. This sudden confrontation instantly drew everyone's attention. The people inside the cafe immediately understood that the syndicate had somehow attacked the headquarters itself. Many were shocked at how such an incident could happen here. Jinwoo was equally perplexed, trying to understand what exactly was going on. While both sides stood face to face inside the broken cafe, the ordinary people present around grew increasingly restless. Some individuals were absolutely certain that their death was guaranteed today, while others tried to comfort them by saying that Park Chung-seok was that famous yaksha known for crushing criminal organizations. Still, the tension in the area continued to escalate. The man in the suit stood confidently with his arms crossed in front of the orc, while Chung-seok shouted in anger, stating that this was an emergency and asking why they were acting like ordinary thugs despite having summons. Sensing the danger, everyone was immediately ordered to summon their creatures and raise protective barriers. Jinwoo also complied, calling out Ramba. As soon as she appeared near him, the fairy began to look around in surprise, but Jinwoo immediately placed his finger on her lips. When she tried to speak, Jinwoo reminded her that she had promised not to speak outside, after which she sat near his shoulder with a pouting face. The man in the suit just smiled and mockingly called Chung-seok a great apostle of justice. Then he gave a direct order and sent the massive orc forward with an axe, challenging Chung-seok to see just how long he could stay alive. Instead of jumping into the fight, Jinwoo hid behind an overturned table and, placing Ramba on his head, thought to himself that getting involved for no reason would only invite new trouble. Still, he was curious enough to keep watching their fight. A few moments later, fire erupted throughout the cafe as a butterfly made of fire rained blazing fireballs toward the orc. The entire area turned into a sea of fire, but as the smoke cleared, the orc appeared standing completely unharmed. Seeing this, the man in the suit laughed out loud and mocked Chung-seok, saying he could do no better than this. Chung-seok just stood gritting his teeth, sweat appearing on his face. Watching the fight, Jinwoo softly remarked that both sides were complete scrubs. However, at this moment, Ramba pulling his hair was causing him more pain. The terrified people behind were worrying that Chung-seok had already been pushed back, and if he lost, the syndicate would not hesitate at all to massacre ordinary people. Hearing their words, Jinwoo began to think about what he should do if he also got caught up in this mess. At that exact moment, the orc raised its massive axe above its head, and delivering a powerful blow, sliced Chung-seok's massive roots right through into two halves. Chung-seok was looking ahead when someone suddenly placed a hand on his shoulder from behind. On the other side, Jinwoo felt that before even getting a chance to live a peaceful life, he was truly going to die here. Right at the moment when the battle seemed almost lost, Jinwoo suddenly stepped forward from behind Chung-seok and calmly called out to him. Chung-seok immediately warned him to stay back, but Jinwoo explained in a low voice that the skill timing of the fire turtle was slightly wrong. Then, he drew Chung-seok's attention toward the support summons standing behind the blood orc. According to Jinwoo, that floating eyeball creature was continuously granting a fire resistance buff, while the remaining support summons stayed behind to make it stronger, and with those buffs active, it was impossible for ordinary fire attacks to have any effect. Hearing this, Chung-seok remembered that every time the support summons used their skills, the orc's body would turn red, and realizing Jinwoo's point was correct, he immediately prepared a new attack. As the orc braced itself, Chung-seok suddenly gave an order and activated the fire turtle's attack at the exact right moment. A dense beam of fire pierced through the entire cafe and collided directly with the orc. Seeing the attack succeed, Chung-seok could not hide his joy, but the man in the suit was completely astonished and began to ask how on earth Jinwoo knew this. Before he could compose himself, massive roots burst from the ground and spread across the battlefield. A wooden vine instantly tightly bound that floating eyeball creature, leaving the man in the suit in disbelief. At the same time, Chung-seok's summons unleashed a continuous barrage of attacks, and streams of fire and explosive fireballs rained down upon the orc. A short while later, a massive pillar of fire engulfed the entire monster, and a loud explosion shook the battlefield. When the smoke finally cleared, the enemy's summons began to disappear one by one. Seeing his entire strength depleted, the man in the suit's confidence shattered in an instant. The broken barrier around him was flickering, and he frantically began to plead for everyone to stop. Drenched in sweat, he immediately offered to surrender and claimed that he had made a mistake, but before he could finish his words, his gaze fell upon the wooden vines spreading around him. Those vines wrapped tightly around his body and lifted him into the air, while he begged for mercy, promising never to act like a thug again. Chung-seok showed absolutely no sympathy for him and told him in plain words to shut up. While the man kept begging for his life, Chung-seok said in a cold voice that gang members are immediately sentenced to death. Hearing this, tears filled the man's eyes as he understood what was about to happen. After finalizing his decision, Chung-seok raised his hand. The next moment, the massive wooden vine crushed the man right on the spot. The people present around could not believe their eyes. As soon as they realized that the fight was truly over, cheers of joy echoed throughout the cafe. Everyone began to celebrate Park's victory and praise him for defeating the terrorist. Yet Jinwoo could not rejoice with them. Seeing people celebrate even after witnessing someone die right in front of them made him feel that this world was no longer the one he used to know. At that very moment, he realized that to survive in this new reality, he would need to remain far more determined than before. A little later, Chung Seok came to him and thanked him for his help during the fight. Introducing himself as an examiner from the player headquarters, he thanked Jinwoo, stating that because of him, capturing the terrorist became possible. Jinwoo calmly brushed it off, but Chung Seok insisted on rewarding him and asked which guild he was affiliated with. When Jinwoo casually mentioned that he had not even registered at the headquarters yet, Chung Seok fell completely silent. After all, Jinwoo had recognized a summon buff at a single glance, even though tens of thousands of summon types existed in the world. To verify his identity, Chung Seok asked for his ID card, and Jinwoo handed it over without hesitation. After reviewing the information, Chung Seok stated that according to the rules, a background check would be conducted before releasing the reward. Jinwoo simply accepted this and left everything to him, walking away from there. Even after his departure, Chung Seok stood there thinking for a long time. Not much time passed before he made a phone call and informed the person on the other side that he had just sent some data. When asked who it was about, he uttered just one name, Baek Jinwoo. On the other side, Jinwoo was walking along the city streets, and Ramba was sitting on his head as usual. Jinwoo felt a bit bad for making her stay quiet earlier, so he bought a cream-filled bread for her and handed it over. Upon seeing it, Ramba's eyes sparkled with joy. Jinwoo watched her enjoy the bread and thought to himself that she was far more simple-minded than expected. Other players argued with their summons all the time, but Ramba could be won over just by giving her a cream bun. Seeing her happily hugging the bread, Jinwoo began to wonder if everything would truly be all right in the end. After all, he had no intention of interfering in the fight, but if he had not stepped forward at the right time, everyone present there could have died. Across the broken ground, a massive tree-like humanoid had taken a stand against the orc. Meanwhile, Jinwoo was sitting on a park bench, and Ramba was holding a piece of bread near him while he thought about how much the world had changed during his absence. Now he realized that he could no longer afford to delay. Therefore, he decided that it was time to start hunting again. For this, he needed to gather summoning scrolls as quickly as possible and call forth his next summons, among which the training instructor and dragon mage were his biggest priorities. Fortunately, both could be obtained from low-grade summoning scrolls since they were only E-rank and D-rank summons. After finishing her food, Ramba lay down comfortably on the bench with a full stomach and fell asleep within a short while. Along with this, Jinwoo stood up and said it was time to leave, and seeing his sudden energy, Ramba was also startled awake. Meanwhile, Chung Seok received a shocking piece of information over the phone. He found out that Baek Jinwoo had been hospitalized for a full 3 years following a car accident, which immediately made it clear why his player registration had not occurred. Thinking further, this story made complete sense. After all, chaos had erupted in the world exactly 3 years ago, and such accidents were not unusual at all during that time. But when he was told that as soon as Jinwoo was discharged from the hospital, he had immediately applied for player registration, his shock intensified. This news was so unbelievable that both the phone and documents fell from Chung Seok's hands. Even after looking at the application form himself and confirming the name Baek Jinwoo, he kept staring at them in disbelief, muttering that this was truly reality. When someone asked if there was a problem, Chung Seok composed himself and brushed it off as something minor. Still, he immediately made another call and announced that this time he would be personally involved, though he refused to state the reason. Even after ending the call, he could not help but praise Jinwoo's ability to adapt. Waking up after such a long hospital life was one thing, but immediately applying for player registration was a completely different level. Looking at his phone, Chung Seok said softly that Baek Jinwoo might perhaps become an extraordinary talent. A while later, Jinwoo reached the training venue and was stunned to see the massive crowd gathered inside. He knew there would be many people, but seeing the hall so terribly packed was still shocking. Looking at the participants and their summons, he realized that if he wanted to become a player, he would have to leave all of them behind one day. Yet, Jinwoo's confidence did not waver at all. Sitting on a chair with his arms crossed, he announced that this would be a piece of cake for him because no one understood games better than him. A short while later, someone came forward and asked if everyone had arrived. As soon as Jinwoo realized that the training was about to begin, he eagerly looked ahead, but his eyes widened upon seeing the examiner. Standing behind the podium, Park Chung Seok introduced himself as a headquarters examiner and announced the commencement of the written exam training session. Later, Jinwoo found himself sitting across from Chung Seok and admitted that he never thought the examiner would turn out to be him. Chung Seok just smiled and jokingly remarked that perhaps it was a play of fate. Then he asked how he liked the training. Without delaying much, he began explaining the common pattern of the written exam and various summon combinations. As the lecture progressed, Jinwoo recognized a combination, and he could not believe what he was seeing. The combo being taught was the very one he had once made popular in the game himself. Therefore, he began to complain inwardly that they should have at least taken permission before using it. Still, in the end, he admitted that the training was not that bad, which pleased Chung Seok. Following this, Chung Seok brought up the reward he had promised earlier, but stated that before that he wanted to ask a question. Upon Jinwoo's nod, Chung Seok asked seriously whether he used to be a gamer. Confused, Jinwoo repeated the word, after which Chung Seok explained that gamers were the people who had previously played the Battle of Summoners, and nearly 70% of Korea's rankers came from that background. After thinking for a moment, Jinwoo realized that if someone who was not a player knew so much about summon buffs, it would look quite suspicious. For this reason, he admitted that he had played the game. Hearing this, Chung Seok got excited and asked how long he kept playing the game. Jinwoo knew that the game was almost dead, and if he revealed that he had spent a full 10 years in it, his identity would be exposed almost immediately. Therefore, he casually replied that he had played the game for about a year. Hearing his answer, Chung Seok was completely stunned. Grabbing both of Jinwoo's hands from across the table, he asked if he was telling the truth. Jinwoo was startled by this sudden reaction and began to think that perhaps he had understated the matter a bit too much. Still, he hesitantly said yes, but Chung Seok's reaction was not at all what he had expected. Instead of doubting him, Chung Seok was amazed and said that playing such a dead game for a full year was a major achievement in itself. Chung Seok was still astonished by the fact that Jinwoo had played the game for a year. After all, most of Korea's rankers had played that game for less than 6 months. Quickly calming himself down, he apologized for his behavior and informed Jinwoo that he had prepared 2 reward options for him. The first option was to use his authority to get his player registration done immediately. Not only that, he even offered a free pass into the system and a secured spot at the headquarters. But Jinwoo did not listen to all this with much interest. Then, Chung Seok leaned forward a bit and stated the second option, which was a cash reward of 5 million won. Jinwoo found this choice extremely easy. Naturally, Chung Seok thought he would choose the first option, but Jinwoo selected the money without any delay. Hearing his answer, Chung Seok was completely shocked. He immediately pointed out that player registration through the normal route could take a lot of time, but Jinwoo calmly thanked him and said he would handle the registration himself. He made it clear that he had no intention of joining the headquarters. For now, finding new summons was more important to him than anything else. A while later, Jinwoo arrived for the practical examination. Standing at the entrance of the player zone with Ramba on his shoulder and the gorilla by his side, Jinwoo confirmed his identity when his name was called. Following this, a staff member explained the rules of the test to him. He just had to clear the daily dungeon, and since that day was Tuesday, the exam was going to be in a time attack format, which measures how quickly someone completes it. Watching all this from behind, Chung Seok admitted that he never thought Jinwoo would turn down his offer. Even now, he was thinking about that very matter. According to experts, Jinwoo was ahead of almost everyone when it came to understanding runes and summons. One professor had even enthusiastically admitted that Jinwoo's words made him realize how limited his own understanding was. He believed that Korea had finally found an extraordinary talent, and even went so far as to say that one day Jinwoo might secure a place in the rankings. Hearing such praises, Chung Seok himself began to wonder just how much talent was hidden within Jinwoo. For the first time, a question arose in his mind that perhaps he should have offered Jinwoo far better conditions than this, especially when the usually arrogant professors were so impressed by him. On the other side, the staff member finished speaking and informed Jinwoo that he could now enter the dungeon. With a confident smile, Jinwoo moved toward the portal and said, "Let's try this out." A few moments later, he and his summons reached inside the dungeon. As golden energy bands began to swirl around them, a warning appeared stating that the dungeon was filled with highly toxic slimes, and they had to defeat them and exit as quickly as possible. As soon as the challenge began, Jinwoo called out to Ramba. Upon receiving the task, she filled with excitement and said that she would immediately start building stacks. The next moment, green energy spread throughout the entire group, and the gorilla's strength began to increase repeatedly. This dungeon was a massive maze where players had to find the correct path while defeating slimes and finally reach the boss monster. For beginner players, the biggest difficulty was not the enemy, but losing the way. Many participants wasted so much time wandering in the maze that the time limit itself would end, but Jinwoo only smiled because he already remembered this dungeon. Therefore, he showed the way with full confidence and told everyone to just keep running ahead, ignoring the slow-moving slimes. According to him, finding the correct path was extremely easy. It did not take much time and he saw the shortcut. After which he immediately ran towards it because he was fully confident that they would clear the dungeon without any trouble. But as soon as they reached there, several warnings suddenly appeared in front. A boss monster had spawned. Instead of panicking, Jinwoo smiled and said that they were actually seeing this for the first time. In front of them stood a giant slime. Jinwoo, without delaying, gave the order to attack. The gorilla, strengthened by Ramba's buff, moved forward rapidly. It took a high leap and struck both fists on the boss. The effect of that blow was destructive. The slime scattered everywhere and the giant slime's body kept getting crushed under the continuous attacks. Seeing all this, Jinwoo was not surprised at all. According to him, there was a special reason for Ramba being called overpowered. Thanks to her attack speed buffs, even an F-rank summon could show such an impressive performance. Thinking about what else is possible ahead, Jinwoo began to imagine that if these same buffs were applied to some other powerful summon, how crazy the result would be. It did not take much time and the boss was defeated. Along with it, the dungeon was also cleared. In the final result, the completion time was shown as 5 minutes 32 seconds. Although Jinwoo found this slow compared to his old days, he accepted that more could not be expected with an F-rank summon. At that very time, something happened which no one had expected. Suddenly, a notification appeared in which it was told that he had made a new national record. With this achievement, he also received 3 high-grade summoning scrolls and many extra rewards. Looking at the screen with disbelief, Jinwoo realized that he had broken South Korea's record. At that very time, inside a control room filled with monitors and equipment, a young man suddenly began to call his senior loudly to look at the screen because the record had changed. As soon as all the people gathered around him, he told that the Beginner Tuesday dungeon has been cleared in just 5 minutes 32 seconds. The girl standing next to him froze with shock and immediately asked where the new record is visible. When she heard the time, her eyes widened even more. Clearing in just 5 minutes was a huge improvement, and she began to think whether Kang Jae-onho had discovered some new combination. Just a few moments later, Baek Jinwoo's profile appeared on the screen. The staff members began to stare at the screen in confusion. None of them had ever heard his name before, and as far as they knew, he was not even a ranked player. This very fact was making the whole incident even more unbelievable. An unranked player had broken the Korean record, and that too not an ordinary record but the #1 record. A sudden silence spread among many officials sitting around the conference table because everyone was looking at Baek Jinwoo's profile. One woman among them could not hide her surprise and said softly that Baek Jinwoo is truly amazing. On the other side, Chang Seok was looking at the screen with a slight smile. Leaning forward, he said with full confidence that there is no doubt that Jinwoo is a real talent, and even went on to say that he is a national treasure. After this, he struck his hand loudly on the table and said that at any cost they have to connect Jinwoo with them. If their country wants to move forward, they cannot let a person like him naturalize in some other country. Along with this, Chang Seok proposed that Baek Jinwoo should be registered as a player immediately. Hearing this suggestion, an official was shocked and immediately asked whether they are going to do this without a player match. Normally, time attack rankings were divided into national records and global records. Korea's highest record was in the name of Kang Jae-onho, who had made a time of 6 minutes 41 seconds. On the other hand, the global #1 record was with Rachel, whose time was an unbelievable 2 minutes 25 seconds. Still, Baek Jinwoo had already broken Korea's highest record. Therefore, some people began to think whether player match even had any meaning left or not. Chang Seok remained firm on his decision and said that people with extraordinary talent should get special privileges. After some time, Jinwoo reached outside a tall building. Thinking about the record, he was surprised that a time of just 5 minutes was enough to achieve first place, and he began to think whether South Korea's level is truly only this much. At that very time, someone suddenly called him. Before he could react, Chang Seok came running towards him with one hand raised up and shouted, laughing loudly, that he wanted to meet him for a long time. By the time he reached Jinwoo, his breath was running fast due to excitement. Without wasting time, Chang Seok said that he has seen his record and asked how after all he broke the Korean record in the very first attempt. Jinwoo scratched his cheek with a strange smile and just said that perhaps it happened just like that. Chang Seok immediately replied that Tuesday Dungeon's maze is extremely complex. Hearing this, Jinwoo felt as if a fish's swimming was being praised. After this, Chang Seok extended a card towards him and said that first he should accept this. Looking at him with surprise, Jinwoo realized that this is a player license. Chang Seok explained that he has already been registered in a special manner. Jinwoo's name and photo were visible on the license, and Chang Seok said that now he does not need to prove anything. After giving him some time to look at the license, Chang Seok carefully asked how after all he broke the record. Jinwoo became silent. His grip tightened on the edge of the license card, and he realized that if he shared his information right now, a lot could change. If this knowledge spread, South Korea's level could skyrocket overnight. In the imagination of the best outcome, he saw himself living a comfortable life with fame, wealth, and government support. But he also thought about the worst outcome. If everything went wrong, he could be forcibly captured, all information could be extracted from him, and everything could be snatched from him. After considering both possibilities, Jinwoo finally let out a deep breath. When Chang Seok was waiting for the answer, then Jinwoo said that asking such a question is extremely rude. Chang Seok immediately became strict. He bowed his head and apologized without making any excuse. Still, he explained that gaming strategies are usually shared only among players, and they are considered extremely sensitive information. After this, he told Jinwoo to try to understand how desperate South Korea is for talented people. Listening to his words, Jinwoo began to feel that Chang Seok is not a bad person. After all, he had sent the promised money immediately. His nature was also fine and he would understand the situation quickly. Because of this reason, Jinwoo began to consider a different possibility. Instead of running away from the government, perhaps he could take advantage of it. If everything went right, he could become strong much faster compared to moving forward alone. After thinking a lot, Jinwoo called the examiner. Chang Seok replied immediately. Then Jinwoo suggested that they go to some other place and continue the talk. After some time, both were sitting inside a quiet cafe. As soon as they sat, Chang Seok came straight to the point and asked for help from Jinwoo. He told that the headquarters desperately needs his information. But the atmosphere of the conversation changed when Chang Seok told that they had conducted a background check on Jinwoo and found out that he lay on a hospital bed for the last 3 years. Hearing this, Jinwoo's eyes narrowed. He asked straight whether they have got his background checked. Chang Seok explained, apologizing that sometimes extremely skilled unregistered players can also have a connection with criminal syndicates. Therefore, conducting an investigation was necessary. Jinwoo remained serious and said that now when he is officially registered, there should be no further investigation ahead. Along with this, he warned not to do this again. Understanding his meaning, Chang Seok bowed his head and expressed agreement. Still, he was thinking in his mind that usually people get scared as soon as the government gets involved and immediately start cooperating. Chang Seok was finding this whole situation quite strange. Most people began to feel pressure on hearing the name of the government and tried to cooperate immediately. But no effect of this was visible on Jinwoo. Taking a sip comfortably from his mug, he asked a straight question. By helping the government, after all, what will he get? Hearing this, Chang Seok became a little uncomfortable and began to explain that his post in the headquarters is quite high because headquarters examiners were chosen through public votes. Therefore, better performance meant more support, higher ranking, and more influence. Hearing his words, it came to Jinwoo's mind that he looks more like a politician than an examiner. Still, Chang Seok came straight to the point and promised that he would give as much support as possible while staying within the scope of his authority. Unfortunately, this proposal seemed quite vague to Jinwoo. After all, being a government official, Chang Seok could not spend government funds according to his own wish. Therefore, there was no concrete guarantee of this compensation. After thinking for a while, Jinwoo suggested a different arrangement. For 1 month, he would accept the headquarters support and during that same period keep making himself strong. If he liked the results, they could work together ahead as well. If not, he would either return everything received or else give information of equal value. It did not take much time for Chang Seok to understand what Jinwoo is actually saying. For the next 1 month, he was basically being asked to become Jinwoo's personal assistant. Still, he felt that staying close to Jinwoo would give him much more benefit. Because of this reason, he immediately accepted the offer and both shook hands and finalized the deal. As soon as the deal was fixed, Jinwoo placed his first request. He told Chang Seok that the news of his record-breaking dungeon clear time should not be allowed to spread much. Hearing this, Chang Seok was surprised and immediately began to mention the headquarters' protection policies because he felt that Jinwoo is worried about security. But Jinwoo stopped him in the middle. According to him, the headquarters was not able to handle even a gang properly, so guaranteeing the security of valuable talents was a very far-off thing. Chang Seok could not oppose this point. He knew that Jinwoo is saying right. Therefore, he promised that he would try his best to keep the information suppressed. Along with this, he also accepted that hiding this news completely will be impossible. Jinwoo considered this much enough and said that he has no problem in having a little bit of discussion. Nothing was left to talk about, therefore he left from there. On being alone, a slight smile came on his face. At least now there was someone who would try to keep the information controlled. After this trouble was solved for the time being, his attention went to the rewards received from the dungeon. As soon as he opened the inventory, he was surprised. The rewards were much better than his expectation. He had not only received 2 low-grade abrasives, but 3 high-grade summoning scrolls were also achieved. On thinking a little, Jinwoo realized that these rewards were according to that first clear achievement bonus, which every player gets only once in a whole lifetime. It was an obvious matter that he wanted to use the scrolls immediately, but risking everything on just 3 high-grade scrolls seemed risky to him. For a moment he also considered selling them. Just then suddenly a point came to his mind. Now he had become an officially registered player. Therefore he had got access to the player web. Most item trading happened right there and Chang Seok had already got it installed in his phone. In the curiosity to know the existing market prices, Jinwoo opened the application and began to see the listings. As soon as his sight fell on the prices, he stopped right there. A single high-grade summoning scroll was selling for 3 million won. As soon as understanding what this means, he could not believe his eyes. By clearing a dungeon in just 5 minutes, he had effectively earned 9 million won. As soon as this realization occurred, he began to think about the future. If his strength kept increasing at this speed, he could earn countless money. Remembering his parents and Arjun, he promised in his mind that now they will never have to worry about money. Making a plan, he decided to sell all 3 high-grade summoning scrolls. With that money, he could buy a large quantity of low-grade summoning scrolls. After all, Training Instructor and Dragon Mage were such powerful summons that they could defeat even B-rank opponents. But while looking at the market, he noticed something strange. Low-grade summoning scrolls were selling for 5,000 won per scroll. This point he did not understand at all. Players kept collecting low-grade scrolls continuously while clearing dungeons, and much more sellers were present than buyers. In normal circumstances, their price should have been much less than this. On not understanding the reason, Jinwoo decided to use his secret weapon, Arjun button. Without delaying, he placed a call to his younger sister. As soon as the call was picked up, he told comfortably that he needs her help in one matter. As soon as he asked about the prices of low-grade scrolls, Arjun gave the answer immediately. According to Arjun, the headquarters bought them in large quantities. Being surprised, Jinwoo asked why they do so. Arjun, just shrugging her shoulders, said that the headquarters tells this as a part of the Rankers support program. Although the real reason even she did not know, she told that from the early days itself, the headquarters has been buying summoning scrolls in large quantities with tax money. The minimum purchase price was fixed at 5,000 won, but they bought scrolls in a limited number every day. Because players knew that they could sell scrolls to the headquarters sooner or later, therefore no one felt the need to reduce the price. However, she also told that this policy may end soon. Hearing this point, Jinwoo's attention fixed completely on that. On listening further, he came to know that because of this policy, low-grade summoning scrolls were keeping on accumulating in the headquarters for years. After thanking Arjun for the information, he cut the call and began to think. If the headquarters is already drowned in low-grade summoning scrolls, then perhaps some hidden opportunity was present there. After some time, he reached the headquarters again. On seeing him, Chang Seok welcomed him with an unusually bright smile and said jokingly that it seems Jinwoo has started missing him already. Ignoring his words, Jinwoo came straight to the point. He wanted low-grade summoning scrolls. Hearing this demand, Chang Seok was shocked. He had thought that Jinwoo would ask for mid-grade or high-grade scrolls, but he asked for the lowest level scrolls. When asked how many scrolls he wants, Jinwoo said in a calm voice that as many as can be got. Hearing this, Chang Seok fell into thought. The headquarters received about 500 low-grade summoning scrolls every day. Therefore, giving some of them was no big deal. Still, he wanted to know Jinwoo's intention first. He warned that if Jinwoo is making a plan to buy them and sell them again, then this deal will not be possible. Jinwoo immediately made it clear that he is going to use them himself. Anyway, the market was already filled with low-grade scrolls, therefore there was no special benefit in selling them again. Hearing this answer, Chang Seok became even more curious. A gamer like Baek Jinwoo would not collect such a large number of low-grade summoning scrolls without any reason. It was clear that he is thinking something big. Finally, Chang Seok gave agreement to help, but on one condition. In return, Jinwoo will have to give some useful information. Because he was an examiner chosen by public support, therefore he could not distribute resources bought with tax money for free. If a question was asked from him later, he should have some valuable thing received in return. Because of this reason, he gave a straight suggestion. Jinwoo will give information, and the headquarters will give low-grade summoning scrolls of equal value in return for it. Instead of being disappointed, Jinwoo found this arrangement even better. If his information truly proved valuable, then Chang Seok will have no option except to give him value according to that. Understanding this, Jinwoo nodded yes. As his first information, he told a concept named achievement time shaving. Normally, the player holding the national first-place dungeon record received 3 high-grade summoning scrolls as a reward, but if later some other player broke that record, then the reward could be achieved again. Because of this reason, players could keep taking rewards turn by turn while deliberately breaking the record by 1 second and could multiply their benefit many times. By this, not only the involved players but the strength of the entire country would also benefit. But to Jinwoo's surprise, Chang Seok was not much impressed with this information. The headquarters had already considered this strategy and used it as well. Still, he accepted that even now there are many players who have not received this reward even once. Therefore, the information was not completely useless. Understanding that this will not be enough, Jinwoo decided to give even more valuable information. This time, he presented the complete clear strategy of Tuesday Dungeon. Hearing this, Chang almost jumped from his seat. He became confident that now he is going to know Jinwoo's record-breaking method. Therefore, he asked for the complete information with excitement, but Jinwoo corrected him immediately. This strategy was not his own. This was that method which once the 5 emperors used to use. According to Jinwoo, whoever adopts it in a correct way can clear the dungeon in about 3 minutes. Hearing this claim, Changseok remained completely stunned. A clear time of 3 minutes seemed almost like impossible. But before giving any information, Jinwoo raised his hand and stopped him. First of all, the price will have to be fixed. In exchange for the information and along with the low-grade summoning scrolls discussed earlier, he wanted compensation equal to 50 high-grade summoning scrolls. Hearing this number, Chang's heart almost sank. According to the existing market value, this became around 150 million won. Still, Jinwoo said with complete calmness that actually this price is quite less. This strategy worked not only in low-level dungeons, but in top-tier dungeons as well. Considering the price of all clear rewards to be received from this in the future, this information could be of billions of won. After thinking for a long time, finally Changseok accepted his suggestion. If the information proved correct, then Changseok will transfer 150 million won immediately. Apart from this, he also promised to give 10,000 low-grade summoning scrolls every day. Completely confident about the price of his information, Jinwoo assured him that he will never regret this deal. Later on that same day, when evening began to descend on the city, Chang decided to check that information. After working hours, he called many people of the headquarters and gathered them in a field without telling the reason. Obviously, all people were confused about this sudden meeting. One employee even went on to say that Changseok never calls anyone without any concrete reason. Whatever was going to happen was not going to be ordinary at all. The headquarters members gathered in front of Changseok immediately guessed that this meeting is connected with the recently broken Tuesday dungeon record. When Baek Jinwoo's name came forward, then Changseok told proudly that he has received an excellent strategy from abroad, and he has already done its splendid check through Jinwoo. Hearing this announcement, everyone's attention went towards him. Now they understood why Changseok had refused to spread the news of the record. With a smile filled with confidence, he told the real reason for calling everyone here. Those people were going to start a time attack in Tuesday Dungeon. According to Changseok, the key to this strategy was a summon whose name was Spotted Komodo. Hearing this name, all people fell into confusion. In the sight of most players, Spotted Komodo was only an average B-rank summon. Although its defense was good and attack power was also decent, but compared to other B-rank options, it was not considered worth a special investment. Because of this very reason, many players considered it a disappointing summon. But there was one such point on which almost no one's attention went. Spotted Komodo's main food was joint slime. Just this one information changed the whole picture. On releasing it in Tuesday Dungeon, it would start hunting slimes on its own, by which the speed of clearing the dungeon increased dramatically. The results themselves became proof. In a short time, many members of the headquarters began to make new records. Many players reached the boss room in less than 4 minutes and began to tell excitedly that the strategy is working exactly the same way as Changseok had said. Spotted Komodo's effectiveness surprised everyone. Now they were not even needing expensive polishing agents, and some people start to feel that with correct movement speed runes, they can challenge even the world record. After a few days, hiding the success of this strategy became impossible. News articles began to come that South Korea is continuously breaking Tuesday Dungeon records. In some reports, it was even estimated that Examiner Park Changseok and Headquarters Yaksha are behind this sudden progress. Sitting in his office and reading these articles, Changseok became even more sure than before. Baek Jinwoo's price was much more than any ordinary gamer, just his information had produced incredible results. Because of this reason, Changseok finally took a decision. He will make such a special team whose sole work will be to give support to Baek Jinwoo. After examining many candidates, he chose 3 people and finalized the plan. On the other side, Jinwoo also had his own reason to be happy. Seeing the balance of his bank account, he remained silent for a few moments. The amount had already reached above 167 million won. For a moment, he began to think whether earning money was always this easy. Thinking how many cream buns can be bought with this much money, a laugh almost came to him. Apart from money, on that same morning he had also received the promised 10,000 low-grade summoning scrolls. Seeing that Changseok has played his part of the agreement, Jinwoo decided that now it is his turn. He did not waste even a single moment and made preparation to start summoning. Excited as always, Ramba immediately started a dramatic ritual which she had been doing since the time of God Jinwoo. Shedding tears from eyes, she began to pray to all the gods whose names she knew and began to pray for Jinwoo to get a powerful summon. Smiling seeing her excitement, Jinwoo opened the first scroll and announced that now the endless grind is going to start. 1 hour later, reality gave him a loud shock. After opening 3,600 summoning scrolls, he was completely exhausted. Surrounded by heaps of low-level summons, he was staring at the results with disbelief. Not even one decent summon had come out. In almost every pull, only one more F-rank summon was found. Seeing him complaining, Ramba immediately called him a fool. According to her, expecting an X-rank summon by opening just a few thousand scrolls was ridiculous itself. Jinwoo did not understand what the problem is in this. After all, Ramba herself had come out from his very first summon. To him, this seemed a completely normal matter. Ramba immediately removed his misunderstanding. This was not normal at all. That was only unbelievable luck. She even said that opening 10,000 scrolls is also not necessarily enough to get an X-rank summon. For some summons, even 100,000 scrolls can fall short. Hearing this point, Jinwoo became completely entangled. When he questioned, Ramba looked at him with disbelief and asked whether he truly knows the way the summoning system works. Hearing this question, Jinwoo was shocked. In reality, a fundamental rule existed behind the entire system. The total number of available summons was always exactly equal to *10% of the total player population. With approximately 8 billion people in the world, this meant around 800 million summons existed. Most importantly, the total number of horned caterpillar summons alone, the ones Jinwoo kept pulling continuously, exceeded 800 million. Suddenly, the terrible odds of the summoning system began to make sense. Pointing a finger at Jinwoo, Ramba explained that the real crucial point was that isolated summons possess an isolated status, meaning each one of them is entirely unique. Hearing this, Jinwoo was stunned and immediately asked why that was, but Ramba admitted she didn't know the reason either. Still, she reminded him of one certain fact. For now, it seemed Jinwoo was the only human capable of summoning isolated X ranks. Trying to process this information, Jinwoo asked if she was truly saying that while the number of different summon types is in the thousands, 800 million versions of each existed. As the sheer horror of those odds settled into his mind, a cold reality hit him. The probability was a mere *0.001%. Dejected, he leaned forward and groaned, realizing he had to pull a single unique X rank out of so many possibilities, noting that winning the lottery twice in a row would probably be easier. Seeing his state, Ramba leaned against his shoulder and told him not to worry. She explained that once a summon is pulled, it never appears again unless its owner sells it. To illustrate, she used the horned caterpillars as an example, stating that if all 800 million horned caterpillars were already summoned, they would never appear in future summonings again. Even after hearing this, Jinwoo knew the task would remain extremely difficult. While Ramba acknowledged this, Jinwoo had no choice but to agree. After thinking for a bit, he briefly considered switching to mid-grade scrolls, but immediately dropped the thought because they were expensive, less effective, and extremely rare in the market. Ultimately, despite the terrifying odds, he decided he had no choice but to keep moving forward. Holding a glowing blue scroll, he tore it open and prayed silently for a good drop, while Ramba cheered him on enthusiastically. Time passed. 2 weeks later, Jinwoo had opened 1,400 summoning scrolls. By that point, he was completely exhausted, looking as if he might collapse at any moment. Ramba admitted that supporting him through this had nearly killed her in many ways as well. Lying on the bed, Jinwoo mentioned that he had rented a room near the player zone just to make the synthesis of summons easier. Meanwhile, Ramba kept demanding cream bread, while Jinwoo remarked that he couldn't rely on his parents forever. Forcing himself to sit up, he decided it was time to start another round of synthesis and tried to wake Ramba. However, Ramba remained buried in her pillow, still murmuring for cream bread in her sleep. A little later, both arrived at a synthesis shop that used to be a hotel. Just as the Jamsil Tower had transformed into the Tower of Trials, many other buildings had changed too, and this hotel had completely turned into a synthesis facility. Walking through the lobby, Jinwoo faintly recalled that the hotel's buffet used to be quite famous. Reaching a ticket machine, he drew a waiting number and saw that his number was 125. Ramba immediately warned him not to make a mistake, repeatedly telling him to check everything carefully before putting in the summons. Jinwoo assured her that he already knew. Soon, their number was called. Entering the synthesis room, Jinwoo told Ramba that he was relying on her once again. Ramba replied confidently that they could do it. Standing in front of the synthesis interface, Jinwoo selected the Wind Fairy and registered it for synthesis. Upon confirmation, countless summons, including fire lizards, blue bats, and poison goblins, were sacrificed and converted into energy. As the synthesis proceeded, blue particles began to gather around Ramba. When the process was finally complete, Jinwoo was astonished to see how many summons had been consumed. However, the hard work did not go completely to waste. Ramba's level increased to 21, and her intelligence gained a 2-point boost. Even so, Jinwoo smiled with difficulty and remarked that after grinding through 1,400 summons, she had only reached level 21. Ramba ignored his complaint and enthusiastically asked if she looked more powerful now. Playing along, Jinwoo praised her and said she was the absolute best. Still, in his mind, he couldn't help but think that with the maximum level being 100, reaching it was going to take an immense amount of time. A few more days passed. Meanwhile, Changseok sat at his desk, noting that everything had been going particularly well recently. Although Byung-jin agreed with him, he didn't understand why Chang Seok was so excited. Holding a document, Chang Seok announced that now that they had formed the talent management team, he would focus entirely on supporting Baek Jinwoo throughout his tenure. Hearing this, Byung-jin turned toward him with a tense expression. Curious about Jinwoo's current status, Chang Seok asked what Baek Jinwoo was doing at the moment. After a bit of hesitation, Byung-jin began to answer. When Chang Seok heard that Baek Jinwoo was still opening summoning scrolls and had taken even more scrolls today, he asked in disbelief if he was really still doing that. His shock intensified upon learning that Jinwoo wanted to spend an additional 150 million won entirely on low-grade summoning scrolls. Byung-jin added that Jinwoo had specifically requested to buy the scrolls at a price lower than the market rate, and asked what they should do, especially since the management bureau was also beginning to notice the matter. After thinking for a moment, Chang Seok noted that Jinwoo was spending such a large sum on low-grade summoning scrolls that wouldn't even sell under normal circumstances. The more he thought about it, the more convinced he became that an important secret was hidden here. For this reason, he ordered that the scrolls be sold to Jinwoo at half price. Hearing this, Byung-jin was completely stunned and immediately said that if anyone found out they were giving Jinwoo such a special advantage, they could get into serious trouble. Still, Chang Seok told him not to worry. In his mind, Baek Jinwoo could become the future hero of Korea. If that happened, people would only praise his foresight for recognizing Jinwoo's value in time and helping him. Imagining his approval ratings climbing even higher, Chang Seok said with full confidence that everything would be fine, instructing Byung-jin to simply follow his orders. Before concluding, he added one more condition. This matter must remain strictly between Byung-jin, Jia, Tae-seop, and himself. Meanwhile, Jinwoo sat amidst heaps of torn red scrolls, continuously opening summoning scrolls. Completely exhausted, Ramba asked how much longer they would have to keep doing this, complaining that she could no longer even feel her hands. Without raising his head, Jinwoo replied in a calm voice that they would continue until either he died or she did. At that moment, a woman walked up to them. Looking up in surprise, Jinwoo greeted her and soon learned she was Jia from the headquarters. After stepping outside to talk, Jia explained that she had come regarding the purchase of the summoning scrolls he had discussed with the examiner. Trying not to look too excited, Jinwoo immediately asked if there was any room for price negotiation. Jia stated that internal discussions had taken place, and considering his recent achievements, they had decided to offer him a special proposal. Not only would the scrolls be available at half price, but he would also be granted an additional 100 million won from the Talent Management Support Fund. Hearing this, Jinwoo fell completely silent, but Jia immediately warned that this arrangement must remain absolutely secret under all circumstances. Jinwoo enthusiastically promised that not a single word would escape his mouth. Pleased with his response, Jia explained that the proposal was meant to build a good relationship between both parties, and Jinwoo said he fully understood. After this, Jia left, and Jinwoo watched her walk away. Holding a summoning scroll, Jinwoo could clearly feel how much the examiner wanted to support him. Because of this, his determination grew even stronger to pull an X-rank summon as soon as possible to repay that trust. Following this, the endless summoning began once more. Late at night, Ramba lay face down among countless torn scrolls, calling Jinwoo's name in a weak voice. Sitting amidst mountains of scroll fragments, Jinwoo acknowledged that they had only one path left. They had to keep going until they obtained both the training instructor and the dragon mage. The fatigue kept mounting, but he continued to open scroll after scroll. In one result, he got an F-rank white snake. In another, an F-rank giant rhinoceros beetle appeared. Then another F-rank horned caterpillar came forward. No matter how many failures he encountered, Jinwoo refused to stop, continuously praying for at least the instructor or the dragon mage to appear. Just then, as he tore another scroll and pleaded inwardly for a miracle, a sharp blast of golden light suddenly erupted from within it. Seeing it, Jinwoo froze on the spot. This was the exact same effect that had appeared when Ramba was summoned. What could this mean? Realizing the implication, both Jinwoo and Ramba stared ahead in disbelief. A few moments later, they got their answer. An X-rank summon had emerged from that low-grade summoning scroll, the Dragon Mage. A female mage enveloped in flames appeared before them, and seeing her, both Jinwoo and Ramba went wild with joy, clinging to Jinwoo's head. Ramba shouted in excitement that he had finally succeeded. Jinwoo became so emotional that he claimed he could now die happy. However, the celebration did not last long. Almost immediately, Jinwoo composed himself, stating that now was not the time to rest. According to him, this was gacha momentum. Confused, Ramba asked what that actually meant. In response, Jinwoo explained with absolute confidence that when one gets a good pull, they must keep summoning before the flow of luck runs out. Without wasting a single moment, he tore open another low-grade summoning scroll. Once again, a golden glow burst forth, bringing another X-rank into view, the training instructor. Ramba could not believe her eyes and yelled that gacha momentum was truly real. After such a long grind, Jinwoo finally clenched his fist as tears streamed from his eyes. He had finally succeeded. A figure bathed in golden light slowly began to manifest before them. Looking at the two newly summoned X-ranks, Jinwoo could not contain his happiness and proudly stated that he had finally acquired both. The man looked around in confusion, asking where exactly he was. This summon was the training instructor, an X-rank who was once considered an unpopular E-rank due to his weak combat capability. However, Jinwoo knew very well that his true value had nothing to do with fighting. The instructor was a training fanatic who took training more seriously than anything else in the world. He would continuously push summons to their limits, making them perform impossible routines and forcing them to grow stronger. Although he wasn't very powerful himself, his true strength lay in his unique abilities. Once Jinwoo acquired the instructor's skill, he could unlock the hidden potential of other summons and multiply their growth speed. Thinking about this, Jinwoo grew excited. With the help of this skill, he could finally make all his summons far more powerful. However, Ramba was not happy about this at all, bluntly stating that she had no interest in becoming stronger. Ignoring her complaint, Jinwoo smiled and called the instructor by his old nickname, Hyunyo. Hearing this name, Hyunyo paused. The nickname instantly triggered his memories, and both he and Pokurang, the dragon mage, realized who was standing before them. Upon this realization, Hyunyo immediately dropped to his knees and addressed him as Lord God Jinwoo. Jinwoo wasn't surprised by this reaction at all. After all, he had thought that after gaining isolated status, he might never meet these two again. Yet Ramba and Hyunyo were exactly as he remembered them. Bowing his head in respect, Hyunyo expressed that having the opportunity to see him again was a massive honor. At the same time, another voice was heard. Pokurang stepped forward hesitantly and asked if he was truly Lord God Jinwoo. This was the first time Jinwoo had heard her speak. Pokurang was an ex-isolated ranked dragon mage with a terrifyingly destructive skill called Explosive Dragon Wave, fueled by a volatile dragon seal in her heart. After defeating boss-level enemies, she could unlock a skill called Predation, which permanently boosted that power even further. The problem was that Predation couldn't be unlocked without Hyunyo's assistance. This was the very reason Jinwoo had worked so hard to acquire both of these summons. He was the only player who knew how to use Pokurang correctly, so he understood her value better than anyone else. Unable to contain her emotions, Pokurang said excitedly that she had missed him terribly. Jinwoo smiled and admitted he had missed her too. However, he immediately told them both not to call him God Jinwoo in front of other people, requesting that they just call him Jinwoo instead. Hyunyo agreed instantly, while Pokurang obediently corrected herself, calling him Lord Jinwoo. With that settled, Jinwoo let out a long, exhausted sigh. After so many events, he just wanted to go home and sleep. Later that night, Jinwoo collapsed onto his bed and immediately fell into a deep sleep. Meanwhile, his summons remained awake. Looking at the others, Hyunyo remarked that a very long time had passed. Pokurang agreed with him, while Ramba happily joined the conversation, noting that they had barely spent a month together before being separated. Hyunyo asked if he could just call her Ramba. Ramba immediately reminded him that she was an active summon long before Hyunyo was recruited, making her his senior technically. Hyunyo acknowledged this fact but made it clear that it meant nothing to him. "I have only one thing to say," Hyunyo stated, leaning toward them against a backdrop of a blazing fire. "We are still too weak." Clenching his fist, he said they still had a very long way to go to become truly useful to their lord. For this reason, even while he was sleeping, they all had to train continuously. Hearing this, Pokurang stood perfectly rigid. Pointing a finger at her, Hyunyo issued his first command, ordering her to cross her arms, sit down and practice feeling mana, adding that once Jinwoo woke up, he would unlock Predation for her. "Predation? I understand," Pokurang nodded without any hesitation. Next, Hyunyo narrowed his eyes and looked at Ramba. "And you, Ramba." Ramba immediately clutched a cushion tightly, the nervousness on her face slowly turning into dread as her entire body began to tremble. Hyunyo stated that she needed to increase her swing speed, so her training would focus on boosting her power. Staring at her with glowing eyes, he asked if she didn't want to help her lord. Holding back tears and breaking into a nervous sweat, Ramba reluctantly admitted that she did. Hyunyo pointed toward a frying pan hanging in the nearby kitchen. "Then start swinging that frying pan." He added that since it was the first day, she only had to complete 5,000 swings. Ramba extended a trembling hand, crying out, "Jinwoo, please save me." Completely ignoring her painful plea, Hyunyo grabbed her hand and dragged her away while Ramba kept trying to break free with all her might. Meanwhile, Jinwoo slept peacefully on his bed. The next morning, a clear and bright sky stretched over the city. The scene shifted to an office. "Can you not give me any more low-grade summoning scrolls?" Changseok sat behind his desk while Jia stood before him. Jia explained that a new notice had been issued by the office, and the order came directly from headquarters. Director Changseok furrowed his brows, unable to understand why the director of headquarters was paying attention to such a minor matter. Grinding his teeth in frustration, he complained that they were now demanding a full accounting of where every single low-grade summoning scroll was used. Damn it, placing a hand on her chin, Jia suggested that examiner Im Hisu might have exerted his influence somewhere. Changseok sat silently behind his desk for a moment, then spoke bitterly, noting that the man always opposed everything he did given the slightest opportunity. Following this, Jia asked what they should do next, mentioning that she had already prepared all the explanation documents, but if the management bureau stopped sending low-grade summoning scrolls, they would have nothing left to give Baek Jinwoo. Hearing this, worry became clearly visible on Changseok's face, especially since the time to send the next shipment was drawing near. Right at that moment, his eyes suddenly widened and a drop of sweat appeared on his face. His phone began vibrating with an incoming call and he picked it up immediately. Baek Jinwoo, standing nearby with her arms crossed, Jia asked what had happened. Reading the message, Changseok let out a long sigh of relief. It looks like we won't need to give him any more low-grade summoning scrolls. Then his face turned serious, but more importantly, the message stated that Baek Jinwoo no longer needed low-grade summoning scrolls because he had already obtained what he wanted. After reading the message, Changseok made his decision. Now I must finish this matter with Im Hisu. Following this, the scene shifted to a clear and open day, showing a blue sky over the city and distant rolling mountains. This place was Gwanaksan Mountain, located near Seonbawi Station in Gwasan, Gyeonggi-do. A sneaker came down firmly on the ground. Placing a hand over his forehead, Jinwoo looked into the distance. So this is a normal dungeon. At that moment, information about the dungeon system appeared before him. In BOS, there were 4 types of dungeons in total: normal dungeons, daily dungeons, the Tower of Trials, and the Chaos Dragon. Among these, the daily dungeon provided specific materials every day. On the other hand, under a sky as red as blood, a massive tower stood piercing the sky with bats flying all around it. This was the Tower of Trials, compared to a normal dungeon. Its difficulty was nothing short of hell. Players entered it to test their limits, and the larger the rewards, the more terrifying its mortality rate was. The scene then shifted again to show a massive dragon spreading its wings and unleashing a terrifying torrent of fire. Jinwoo stood with 2 companions while the massive flames spread across the entire battlefield. This was a raid boss, which players challenged by forming a party. However, since this content had not been updated yet, information about it was left for later. Following this, the information window returned to the present time. A blue portal was spinning with energy. It explained that apart from those 3 specific categories, all other dungeons were considered normal dungeons, and Jinwoo was about to enter one right now. Moving forward, he glanced at his phone. In BOS, these were called stage dungeons, but in the real world, they simply manifested randomly anywhere. His phone screen was filled with party recruitment posts. Although going with a party was possible, Jinwoo had no intention of joining one. Standing before the glowing blue portal nestled among the rocks, he examined it carefully. Caution tape was wrapped around the entrance, and a staff member in a suit stood nearby. It was noted that if too much time passed after a dungeon manifested, a dungeon break would eventually occur, causing monsters to pour out into the real world. The staff member looked toward Jinwoo. "If you have come to enter the dungeon, I must check your license first." "Here it is." Jinwoo handed over his license without hesitation. "Yes, everything is in order." Upon receiving permission, he walked straight toward the portal. The blue gateway began to glow brightly, and the staff member cautioned him one last time, "Please take care of yourself." A bright light spread in the midst of dense darkness. Jinwoo slowly lowered his sight. Behind him, blue energy began to wave, and a drop of sweat emerged on his cheek. Before he could understand anything, the sound of weapons clashing echoed throughout the entire area. Red energy flashed and steel collided with each other. Monsters were continuously raining their weapons on the shields of the soldiers. Just then, Jinwoo understood where after all he had reached. So this is it. In the deep red sky, red lightning was flashing, and beneath tall stone fortresses, countless orcs were running while attacking. This was a subjugation dungeon. On the fortress walls, soldiers wearing armor were already standing with bows drawn. Orcs are climbing the wall. Fire, pour hot water. Many orcs were climbing the fortress wall with the help of wooden ladders. In BOS, this was just a game. Therefore, at that time, this had never felt so real. Glowing arrows ran like lightning across the battlefield. One arrow went straight, piercing the face of one orc and penetrated another orc standing behind it. Blood scattered everywhere on the battlefield. One orc struck its weapon with full force on a soldier's shield. Nearby, a wounded soldier fell to the ground. "Need a healer here quickly." The second soldier began to shout loudly for help while handling the injured man. Standing on the wall, Jinwoo was looking down at the battlefield with a tense gaze. For the first time, he had seen a real war with his own eyes. Closing his eyes for a few moments, Jinwoo calmed himself. He had to compose his focus again and do the same which he had always been doing. A blue barrier formed all around him, and energy began to wave on its surface. Floating nearby, Ramba leaned forward with a smile filled with confidence. Everyone get ready. Pokyurang gripped her staff tightly, while flames began to revolve all around her and Hunyo. Standing on the fortress wall, Jinwoo summoned the Wind Fairy, Training Instructor, and Dragon Mage. All three summons immediately appeared near him. A golden fairy came near Minakong and began to hover, and the entire team gathered. In D-rank tanks and healers, there was no one better than these. Ramba, smiling, began to raise her staff. Okay, without wasting a single moment, she cast the buff that increases Hunyo's attack speed. Looking toward the battlefield, Pokyurang stood ready and fire kept revolving all around her. Give cover fire to Hunyo from behind. Yes, Lord Jinwoo. As soon as the order was received, Minakong moved forward like lightning. Green energy had covered his entire body. Minakong attacked the orc boss directly. Without stopping even a bit, Minakong leaped from the wall. A long line of green energy formed behind him, while he was descending toward the army present below. In reality, the pattern of the orc subjugation dungeon was quite straight. Minakong descended into the battlefield with a loud blast and debris flew all around with green energy. Managing his body, he looked toward the giant orc standing in front. To clear the dungeon, they just had to defeat that giant orc standing at the very back. The giant orc, roaring, raised its weapon above its head. The very next moment, its heavy blow fell with full force on Minakong's crossed arms. Go, Ramba called out while spinning her staff. On the other side, Hunyo's eyes were continuously fixed on the battlefield. A wave of green energy spread throughout the entire area. In the midst of smoke and debris, sharp green blows tore through several hordes of orcs together. Their bodies were cut into pieces and blood scattered in the air. Hunyo entered straight into the middle of the battlefield. Behind his sword, green energy kept waving and he cut another orc into 2 pieces in a single blow. Seeing all this from the fortress wall, Jinwoo slowly let out a breath, perhaps because they were X-rank summons. Whatever the reason, Hunyo was many times more powerful than the Hunyo of the early game. A slight smile came on Jinwoo's face. Anyway, just casting a glance at the battlefield, he understood that this fight was going to be even easier than his expectation. Minakong and the Golden Fairy kept moving forward without stopping. At the same time, Ramba continuously kept spinning her staff, and Hunyo went on cutting orcs one after another. The soldiers standing on the wall could not believe their eyes. Do we have some allies with us? These people are amazingly powerful. One soldier, looking at the battlefield, became completely astonished. Will we truly escape alive from this war? Minakong roared loudly and took a straight leap toward an orc holding a giant mace. On the other side, the Golden Fairy, flying in the air in the midst of glowing light, continuously kept treating the wounded soldiers. Meanwhile, Ramba, with a mischievous smile, was roaming enjoyably in the sky. What happened? Got scared. She, teasing the orcs present below, was escaping very easily from their every attack. Just then, Jinwoo leaned forward from above the fortress wall. Near him, several axes were already stuck in the stone. Ramba, stop having fun now. Hey, sorry. Laughing, Ramba flew back toward him. At that same time, Hunyo cut down another orc. How did you dare to throw an axe at my lord? Die. On the other side, Pokyurang gripped her staff even more firmly. Fire began to revolve all around her staff, and she silently completed her chant. Then she raised her staff toward the battlefield. Now it is my turn. The very next moment, a giant wave of fire erupted from the fortress walls. Explosive dragon wave. A giant fire in the shape of a dragon ran with open mouth across the entire battlefield. That fire swallowed countless orcs in a single turn. While burning alive, their screams began to echo throughout the entire battlefield. Even the giant orc got surrounded in that fire. Its body turned completely black and it began to roar with pain in the midst of the fire. At that very moment, Hunyo took a loud leap on the ground. Debris flew from beneath his feet and he broke straight toward the giant orc. In a single blow of his sword, he separated the giant orc's head from the torso. Blood leaped in the air. A few moments later, that severed head came to the ground with a loud sound. Hunyo was still standing right there with the sword in hand. Yes, Ramba waved her fist in the air with joy. As soon as the giant orc died, the dungeon was officially cleared. When Pokyurang saw her status window, her eyes shined. Wow, her dragon mage had reached level 5. Along with it, her intelligence also increased by 2 points. Nearby, glowing particles began to gather all around Hunyo, and he, closing his eyes, accepted his rewards. His training instructor had also reached level 5, and his critical hit rate had also increased by 1 point. Seeing the rewards, Jinwoo became completely astonished. I earned 500,000 won in just 3 minutes. Not only this, he had also got an intermediate grade summoning scroll. In the midst of the entire team gathering and continuously receiving rewards, Ramba happily began to congratulate everyone on leveling up. After seeing all the results, Jinwoo immediately made a decision. He had to find the next dungeon as quickly as possible. He clenched his fist. Now he could also increase the level of his summons and at the same time earn money too. Standing on the fortress wall, Jinwoo looked in front with a firm gaze. Now the time has come to change my life. Now will start the never-ending grind. On the other side, a tall office building standing under clear blue sky was visible. Inside, Changseok sat silently behind his desk with his head bowed, while Jia stood nearby with a serious face. After all, from where did you get the confidence to place such a big bet? The beginning was made by that bastard. Saying just this much, the scene reached back to that meeting. An elderly man was sitting nervously in the middle of a long conference table. Gentlemen, please calm down. On the other side, both examiners sitting face to face were still staring at each other. Hisu leaned back comfortably on the chair and there was an arrogant smile on his face. I felt examiner Changseok is wasting the budget. Therefore, I just gave a small suggestion. Changseok's face immediately became strict. Hisu, without stopping making fun of him, spoke. What kind of talent management team is this that cannot prepare even one decent talent? Changseok's face became even stricter. Hisu said further that any talent prepared by Changseok has not been chosen as a national representative till today. He leaned further back on the chair and smiled. Has so much arrogance come because of the recent Tuesday dungeon record? His smile became even wider. Or is the reason something else altogether? Changseok kept sitting right there trembling with anger. As much as he wanted to reply, he could not deny one fact. Every year, rankers prepared by Hisu were chosen as national representatives. That man was quite arrogant, but he also had the ability to prove his point. Finally, Changseok broke the silence. Now I will not tolerate all this anymore. His gaze became sharp. If the talent prepared by me is chosen as a national representative, then... An arrogant smile spread on Hisu's face, then let there be a bet. He narrowed his eyes. There can be only 10 national representative players. Let's see whose talent reaches the highest. Okay. Changseok gave agreement without any hesitation. Both leaned toward each other and the atmosphere became filled with tension in a moment. The one who loses will accept that the second examiner is better than him and will resign, along with giving a penalty of 1 billion won. Prepare the contract right now. On the other side, the director was sitting helplessly between the two, trembling. Please stop fighting. The scene returned again to the present time. Jia placed her hands on her waist. Are you truly doing all this only because you have trust in Baek Jinwoo? He nodded his head. However splendid he may be, after all, he is only a gamer. Compared to registered rankers, there is still a significant lack in him. Changseok kept sitting behind his desk with hands folded. I know. He tightened his fingers even more in front of his mouth. For a few moments he sat silent, but he slowly raised his head. Absolute trust was visible in his eyes. I have trust in Baek Jinwoo, and if we gave him the correct support, then he will give us very big information. Jia, becoming worried, was just about to say something when the office door opened loudly. Examiner, a man came quickly inside the room. Jia immediately turned and began to look toward him. What happened? Behind him, Changseok also immediately stood up from his chair. Standing at the door, Byungjin was holding a report firmly in his hand. Tense anxiety was clearly visible on his face. This is about that player who for some time past is clearing dozens of D-rank dungeons alone. Changseok immediately ran toward him. Jia stepped back in surprise. What? As soon as both saw the name written on the report, they froze right there. That name was Baek Jinwoo. Jia's calm face also changed in a single moment. The player who had got registration done just 1 month ago is clearing D-rank dungeons in less than 5 minutes. She read the report again, not believing it. On the other side, the smile on Changseok's face was not taking the name of leaving at all. He laughed comfortably and began to enjoy the full flavor of that moment. I had said earlier. Raising both hands in the air, he said proudly that Baek Jinwoo is truly an amazing person. But this produced no effect on Jia. In her mind, she was feeling strange on hearing Changseok's old slang. On the other side, Changseok clenched his fist. I had trust in Baek Jinwoo from the beginning. After this, the scene changed once again. The sound of footsteps echoed and someone came out emerging from a dungeon portal. Behind, Chang's thought kept running that he knew from the beginning itself that the result would be this right here. After all, in identifying talent, his vision was never wrong. Baek Jinwoo, roaming comfortably, came outside in front of the blue portal and full peace was on his face. After this, the scene reached a quiet room. Lifting the phone in hand, Jinwoo saw the balance visible on the screen. More than 26 million won. A smile filled with satisfaction came on his face. The very next moment, with a red face and a big smile, he fell flat on the bed with a thud. I earned a full 16 million won. Nearby, the golden fairy was flying in the air, and Ramba was standing behind him smiling. In the last 4 days, Jinwoo had spent almost the entire time inside D-rank dungeons. Without stopping, he had cleared a total of 160 dungeons. On the other side, Hunyo was spinning his sword. His sword, piercing the air, went and struck the enemy standing far away, and fire spread in the battlefield. During this period, a chibi form of Jinwoo was seen standing with tears in his eyes in front of big heaps of money. Becoming emotional, he folded his hands and said that all this money was earned by selling all those intermediate-grade summoning scrolls. Standing under sharp spotlight, he proudly raised his phone toward the sky. Tears began to stream from his eyes. This is my blood and sweat's earning. Finally, the opportunity of the world made for me has arrived. Standing nearby, Ramba immediately cut his words. Sweat was shed by us. Ignoring her words, Jinwoo sat on the bed and began to see his phone. Okay, first of all, let's separate the accounts. Ramba, hugging a loaf of bread, sat on top of an open ledger. This is the living expenses account. On the other side, several chibi versions of the entire team gathered around the second ledger. Later, I will also make a family account to spend openly. And this is the savings account. Every month, I will deposit 10 million won in this. After this, in a stylized scene, Jinwoo was sitting on a golden throne showing a thumbs up. Becoming a player earning 10 million won every month from being unemployed was making him happy inside. Earning 10 million won every month truly feels like some dream. Then his gaze turned serious and in the end, another account opened on his phone's screen. In it, more than 6 million won had already been deposited. Player account. On top of an open ledger, a heap of red summoning scrolls was kept. The entire money of this account will be spent only on my summons. Looking toward the phone, Jinwoo's face became serious. Money was necessary, but increasing his value as a player was even more necessary than that. After continuously grinding dungeons, all his summons had already crossed level 30. Nearby, Ramba leaped with joy. Now when everyone had reached level 30, then finally the time had come to upgrade them in the correct way by equipping runes. Taking the phone in hand, Jinwoo began to think how this can be done fastest. The answer was completely clear, grinding the daily dungeon. And if he had to clear it the fastest, then he needed powerful core summons. He, opening the player web, began to search. Will any be found in the market? The very next moment, his eyes widened. Seeing the screen, a drop of sweat rolled down his cheek. C-rank summons were selling for around 20 million won. Why is it so expensive? He immediately began to see higher ranks. The average price of B-rank summons was around 200 million won, and there was no listing at all of A-rank and S-rank summons. Like this, my account will become empty in a single stroke. Letting out a long breath, he looked toward the screen again. But on thinking, this point made sense. After all, even from high-grade summoning scrolls, the chance of getting a B-rank summon was only 1%. After thinking for some time, Jinwoo smiled slightly. No matter. Then he picked up his phone. The call connected almost immediately, placing the phone to his ear. A smile filled with confidence spread on his face. That is why I had kept a safety net ready in advance. On the other side, an employee wearing a suit entered rapidly inside the office. Examiner Chang-seok, resting his chin on one hand, was seeing documents. What happened? That employee came quickly to him. A new request has come from player Baek Jinwoo's side. What? Chang-seok immediately leaped up from his chair and stood. The very next moment, he gripped both hands of T-seop and leaned toward him in excitement. What is it? What has he asked for? You just scared me. T-seop became a little nervous and immediately put his phone forward. See this. A detailed purchase list of summons sent by Baek Jinwoo was visible on the screen. Summon purchase list. Chang-seok's eyes widened. He again gripped both hands of T-seop. Is all this? T-seop nodded his head. He wants all this after buying. Looking at the list, Chang-seok scratched his head. If the headquarters were ready to buy all this, would he still be using C-rank summons? But the bigger point than that, what after all is he going to give us in return? Just then, T-seop told the answer. Baek Jinwoo was ready to share the entire secret of achieving time attack in the daily dungeon. T-seop's face became serious. Not just Monday or Wednesday of the entire daily dungeon. Wait, Chang immediately stood straight. Meaning he will share everything, not just one. Yes, Chang placed his hands on his waist. He is making a quite expensive deal. Still, a smile slowly spread across his face. Okay, for the time being I understand. He folded his arms and his face became serious. I tried to talk to the director, but regretfully the talk did not work. The very next moment, Chang-seok sat holding his head in frustration. He struck his fist on the desk with anger. Those old people taking decisions in closed rooms. Fools with old thoughts. He even climbed onto the desk and began to wave both hands wildly. That is why our country always stays at the very back. Papers scattered all around. Both employees just kept looking at him in astonishment. What has happened to him? Approval was not received. On the other side, Jia was watching all this silently with arms folded. A slight smile came on Jia's face. If only every examiner had so much passion. Tio looked toward Chang-seok, who was filled with anger. What did the director say? An atmosphere of anger, as it were, formed all around Chang-seok. They said that first bring proof or else show it by clearing yourself. Before the words could be completed, he flared up again. Without summons, how do I show by clearing? Clenching his fist and leaning forward, he began to shout again. If that information turns out true, then it will be a very big matter. It's a straight jackpot, and those fools sitting in the headquarters are not even understanding its value. Just then he suddenly became quiet. His eyes widened. Jia looked toward him comfortably. This is quite disappointing. Chang-seok blinked his eyelids. Disappointing. Jia placed a finger on her cheek. A slight smile came on her face. Selling such valuable information to the headquarters for just 1.3 billion won is truly disappointing. Don't you think, examiner? Jia raised a finger. If I pay its full price. On hearing this, both men began to look toward her in astonishment. Chang-seok's eyes began to tremble and he remained silent for a few moments. Now when I think. Just then, Yu Jia's real identity came forward. Standing confidently in the midst of tall corporate buildings and countless achievements, Jia was the fourth granddaughter of the Daesung Group family, which was one of South Korea's most powerful conglomerates. Brought up in Daesung's elite Keibol environment, Jia was prepared for success since childhood, but her interest was always in something else. Where other people were engaged in management rights and the company's legacy, players seemed much more interesting to Jia. And in recent days, one player had pulled her entire attention toward himself. Baek Jinwoo. Despite being a beginner, he possessed astonishing information. Not only this, he had also shown the courage to deal straight with the government. The more Jia kept knowing about him, the more her interest kept increasing. Because of this reason, she gave a new suggestion. Why not make a separate one-man management team just for Baek Jinwoo? Hearing this suggestion, Byungjin became completely entangled, while behind him Chang-seok kept listening silently. If the correct investment is received, then Jinwoo could take full advantage of all his information, and all could split the profits resulting from it later. This was a completely different method from the existing talent management system. While thinking, placing a hand on the chin, she was asked carefully, "Are you completely sure? This is a very large amount." Jia smiled immediately. Standing confidently on a mountain of coins, she looked toward Chang-seok. "Are you worrying about my bank balance right now?" Chang-seok laughed, "Like I would do that." Jia, folding her arms, nodded her head. "There is no need to worry about money." Then her face softened a bit. "But before that, I will have to meet Baek Jinwoo one more time." After this, the scene changed. Jia was sitting at a table, immersed in deep thought. After some time, she turned her head. Jinwoo had reached there. The employee wearing a suit standing behind her bowed politely and said, "Then please talk comfortably." "Yes, thank you." Just seeing this much, it was clear that the headquarters was showing full honesty this time. After all, just after receiving one information, they had fixed a face-to-face meeting. They had shown speed much faster than expectation. A short while later, Jinwoo was standing in front of a splendid building. That restaurant looked even more splendid than many five-star hotels. Inside, employees wearing uniforms were welcoming guests and premium service was being given everywhere. Turning his gaze all around, Jinwoo himself could not help being impressed. Treatment like a truly special guest was being given to him. At such a time, sharing information was also not feeling wrong. Just then, a familiar voice was heard. "You arrived, Jinwoo." Jia was standing near the table with a slight smile. As soon as he saw her, Jinwoo remembered the background check she had done. Seeing its results, he had almost fainted. Her beauty was amazing in itself. Then her family background came forward, and in the end, her own achievements. Everything about her was astonishing. Seeing the article regarding Jia's achievements, Jinwoo just kept shaking his head. He had never thought that a third-generation Keibol would truly be working in the headquarters. Jia placed a hand on her chest and smiled. "Thank you for coming." Jinwoo looked here and there. "Are you alone?" "Yes," she answered with a smile, closing her eyes. "Today's matter is not connected to the headquarters, it is something else." After the food was served, their conversation moved forward, but after a short while Jia broke a bad news. "I don't think there will be any more support from the headquarters side." Sitting in front and holding a glass, she explained the whole matter. Examiner Park Chang-seok really tried his best, but a lot of people were against this proposal. "If this is the headquarters' final decision, then we can't do anything." The surprising thing was that Jinwoo accepted it very comfortably. The truth was that he was not too worried. He was confident that even without any support, he would reach the very top one day through his own hard work. He was just about to eat the next morsel when Jia spoke again. "But I have a proposal." Jinwoo stopped right there. Jia comfortably placed the glass of water in front of him. "This proposal is only for you, Jinwoo." Then she sat up straight. Her voice was filled with confidence. "I am going to start a private management agency." Hearing this, Jinwoo became completely stiff. His eyes widened in surprise. Jia started explaining further. "The headquarters has to work with countless rules and restrictions, but a company has only one motive, profit. Because of this, it can work in a much more aggressive manner." Holding a gold card in her hand under the shining light, she placed her proposal forward. Jinwoo needed connections. He needed people who could understand the real value of his information, and he also needed resources that he could take full advantage of. Jia could give him all of this. "I am ready to give Baek Jinwoo everything he needs, with the professional support of Jia and Daesung." Jinwoo kept looking at her, completely astonished. There was hardly any organization more trustworthy than Daesung, and one thing was always true: money never lies. On the other side, Jia smiled softly. "We have met only a few times so far, but you seemed like a really good person to me. For a talent like you, Jinwoo, this is completely natural." Jinwoo hesitantly held his glass, and a slight shyness reflected on his face. Finally, their conversation ended. "I will explain the rest of the things along with the contract, and if things go well, I will also come to that empty land tomorrow. Also, check out those summons you were demanding." Jinwoo was completely shocked. "So soon? I haven't even signed the contract yet." Jia leaned forward a little. She smiled slightly. "Yes, whatever your decision may be, I was making all the preparations in advance." Then she said, smiling confidently, "Consider this a gift from my side." Hearing this, Jinwoo's happiness knew no bounds. This is amazing. Long live Cheeble. The next day, under clear blue sky, a wooden signpost stood by the side of a dirt path. Ajin was looking ahead while walking on the path. Will Oppa be here again today? A slight exhaustion appeared on her face. In recent days, Jinwoo had started staying so busy that she couldn't even talk to him properly. She had even heard that he had taken his own separate place to live. What on earth has he been doing all these days? Then she suddenly stopped. There he is. She saw someone walking on the path ahead, a woman with long hair waving in the wind. Ajin's eyes widened in surprise. Wow, she is so beautiful. But the very next moment, a frown appeared on her face. Wait a minute, I think I have seen her on Insta. Placing her hand on her chin, Ajin tried to remember. Some blurry memories flashed across her mind. She immediately pulled out her phone. As soon as the same face appeared on the screen, her eyes widened completely. It was Yujia. On the other side, Jia adjusted her collar with slight discomfort. Standing behind her, Ajin was still frozen in shock. Over towards the mountains, under the open sky, Hangyo stood wearing black sunglasses, and close by, several exhausted summons had fallen to the ground. Folding his hands, Hangyo was constantly shouting, "If you want to become strong, you have to go beyond your limit." "Do one more lap," one summon answered with great difficulty. "We have already reached our limit." The second summon almost fell down. Hangyo's eye twitched. A slight spark flashed near him. Then he slowly lowered his sunglasses. Placing a finger on his lips, he gestured for everyone to be quiet. "Everyone, stay quiet. Someone is coming." On the other side, Jinwoo was wiping the sweat off his face with a towel. Looking to the side, he saw Jia coming from a distance. He welcomed her with a wave of his hand. "You arrived." "Yes, hello," Jia replied with a smile. "It seems the training has been going on since morning." "Yes," Hangyo replied in a low voice while the rest of the summons gathered behind him. "Just a light one." Jia looked at the exhausted summons. "Are these all your summons? So this is how you prepare your team?" Jinwoo smiled and gestured toward them. "You guys get back to training. I will introduce everyone properly later." All the summons immediately returned to training. Jia began to watch all this with interest. Then she extended one of her hands. A faint blue light began to gather around her palm. "Okay, first of all, let me give you your gift." Instantly, a blue holographic panel opened in front of Jinwoo. A system notification appeared in front of him. Yujia was sending him a trade proposal. It was written in it to look at all the information carefully before accepting. Several trade windows opened around both of them. This was proving once again that the system ran a large part of this world like a game. Trading between players was fully supported. Along with it, a warning message also appeared. If anyone tried to deceive the other person after accepting a trade, the consequence could be very bad. There were even stories in which the system's curse had fallen upon those who ran away with stolen goods. Just these warnings could force anyone to think twice. Finally, Jinwoo looked at the trade window. Yujia's name was visible on one side. Below it was a long list of summons, while his own side was completely empty. Looking at the screen, Jinwoo just kept staring at it. She really bought everything. Jinwoo moved his finger toward the system panel. The trade window asked if he wanted to accept player Yujia's trade. Without wasting a single moment, he pressed accept. Instantly, a blue light began to swirl all around his body. Standing in front of the shining panel, Jinwoo clenched his fist. All the summons gathered by Jia were now his. The very next moment, Jinwoo bowed and said, "Thank you. Thank you very much. This is a very precious gift for me." Jia smiled softly. "There is nothing to say thank you for in this." Then she opened her bag and took out a document from it. "So now, let's talk business." After this, the conversation turned to her new management agency. A modern skyscraper appeared, and Jia told its name. "Ubeek, we have kept this name by combining both of our surnames." Then a chart showing the ownership structure of the agency came forward. The largest share belonged to Jinwoo, 70%. Jia held a 25% stake, and the remaining 5% belonged to examiner Park Chang. Near the office building, Chang's Chibai form appeared showing a thumbs up. Although he will remain in the headquarters, he will keep helping them from there. After this, Jia explained the rest of the structure of the whole team. Several names appeared connected to different parts of the organization. They had decided to keep Byung, Jin, and Teeb as employees. Jinwoo started blinking his eyes in surprise. "Wait, aren't these two from the headquarters? They resigned just this morning. I offered them 3 times the salary in advance." Jinwoo kept looking at the contract held in his hand, but one thing was still beyond his understanding. "Grateful to you, but do you really have no problem giving me 70%? Jia was sitting comfortably on the bench. A calm smile as usual was on her face. "Consider it an investment from my side." She looked ahead with full confidence. "Even with just a 25% stake, I am fully confident that I can increase its value many times over." Then she explained the reason for this because it was almost a one-man company. Therefore, voting rights did not matter much. The most important thing was her relationship with Baek Jinwoo. Leaving greed aside for now, it is more important to strengthen our partnership. Jinwoo looked at the contract. After pausing for a few moments, he signed it. Then he also put his thumb impression. Instantly, Jia's Chibai form appeared with a big smile. After a while, both were sitting face to face on a bench. They shook hands firmly. The contract was complete. "I look forward to working together in the future." "Me too." Just then, Hangyo suddenly turned his head. Surprise spread across his face. A bright flash erupted inside the jungle. The whole area was filled with white light in a single moment. Jinwoo and Jia both immediately looked in that direction. What was that? The very next moment, a loud explosion echoed through the entire area. Debris scattered all around. At the same time, someone's loud scream was heard. After a while, Hangyo emerged from the bushes. He was dragging someone, holding them by the legs. Jinwoo and Jia both looked at him in confusion. Actually, Hangyo had activated Auto Hunt, and because of that, Ajin and her summon were both hanging upside down by their ankles. Both had tightly closed their eyes. Ajin's face was drenched in sweat. Ajin, Jinwoo immediately called out her name. Jinwoo was sitting on the bench with a surprised face. Ajin was sitting nearby on her knees. Leaves and more leaves were stuck in her clothes and hair. She was looking ahead with blank eyes, looking completely defeated. Jinwoo looked directly at Ajin. So you recognized Yujia, and because of being her fan, you followed her. Ajin immediately protested. I just followed her out of curiosity. The very next moment, a light slap landed on her head. Ignoring her complaint, Jinwoo asked further, and after reaching there you saw me, then you kept watching us hiding. Ajin remained silent. This very silence of hers had given all the answers. Finally, she burst out. Okay, you caught me. She quickly moved forward and grabbed both of Jinwoo's shoulders. Then she began to shake him vigorously. But what about you? It's just impossible that you know Yujia. She brought her face even closer. After all, what miracle did you perform? How were you two together? Jinwoo just kept looking at her with a tired face. His head started to ache. Still, he knew one thing in advance. There were some conditions related to family in the contract as well. Sooner or later, everyone was bound to meet. On the other side, Jia smiled softly. In her mind, she was already imagining introducing herself to Jinwoo's family. Anyway, I was going to introduce myself to your family one day, so this is even better. Ajin sat there frozen. Jinwoo immediately got nervous, but not now. Ajin did not listen to a single word of his. Tell me everything. She kept shaking him stubbornly, and Jinwoo kept looking at her helplessly. After a while, Ajin finally calmed down and started thinking. Placing her hand on her head, she looked at Jinwoo carefully. The sky above was absolutely clear. Finally, the answer to the whole matter turned out to be much easier than expected. Ajin suddenly raised a finger. Wait, you were already a fairly famous gamer, and you are also the one who recently broke the record of the low-rank dungeon. Right, Jinwoo leaned forward a little. Exactly. Ajin immediately started connecting all the pieces. So because of this, you kept going to the headquarters repeatedly, and that's where you met Jia. Exactly. Thinking, Ajin touched her chin. Just then she remembered another thing. I remember you used to play some mobile game for years. Was it that same game? Sweat immediately appeared on Jinwoo's forehead. No, that was a different game. Battle of Summoners I played for only about a year. Oh, Ajin believed his words without any doubt. On the other side, Jinwoo took a sigh of relief in his mind. He could not tell at any cost right now that he was God Jinwoo. Suddenly, Ajin clenched her fists. Her eyes lit up, even if it's only for a year. But still, it's a very long time for such a useless game. Then she leaned towards him with a mischievous smile. Who would have thought that your gaming addiction would come in so handy one day? Jinwoo just sat there uncomfortably. He started remembering old things. For a full 3 years, his family had stood by him in every difficulty. They had taken care of him in every situation. Because of this, he could not put them into any danger without thinking. Looking down, Jinwoo made up his mind. First of all, he has to become strong enough to protect his family. Only after that will he tell them everything. Ajin looked at him. But why haven't you told me this thing until now? Jinwoo scratched the back of his head. I was going to tell you one day. I will explain everything to Mom and Dad too, but for now keep it a secret. What? Ajin started blinking her eyes in surprise. On the other side, Hangyo was still keeping an eye on the training of the rest of the summons. There is a good reason behind it, Jinwoo said in a calm voice. At that very moment, Hangyo turned his head toward the shadow elf. A little distance away, Pocorio was sitting nervously, trembling. Hangyo suddenly extended his claws forward. The shadow elf immediately hid further inside the bushes. And yes, about that shadow elf too. Under the shining moon, a massive shadow wolf appeared whose body was covered with countless eyes, and darkness was spread all around it. It began to growl low. The shadow elf flipped in the air and pounced on a monster from behind. Critical hit, stealth bonus activated. Damage multiplied many times over. Without the shadow wolf, not even 10% of her real strength will come out. Ajin was instantly shocked. Holding the phone in her hand, she blinked her eyes. Shadow wolf, is there such a summon too? Maybe you don't know it is of B rank. Hearing this, she immediately opened the market. Her fingers began to move rapidly on the screen. Where on earth am I going to get a B rank from? She kept searching continuously. Then suddenly her fingers stopped. For several seconds, she just kept staring at the phone screen. Finally, her shoulders slumped. Brother. Without saying anything, she extended her phone toward him. A listing was open on the screen. B rank Shadow Wolf, 500 million won. You want me to buy this? It will take me 20 years to buy this. Jinwoo took a look at the screen. Wait a little. Then he said completely casually, within a month I will get you one. Ajin's eyes immediately widened. Her cheeks turned slightly red. She looked alternately at the listing and her brother, 500 million won. And he said it as if it's no big deal. Leaning back from the bench, she raised one hand in a dramatic manner. Now, ever since you became a gamer, you are trying to act way too cool. Jinwoo just stood up. Forget it, I will save money and buy it myself. Before Ajin could finish her sentence, he put one hand in his pocket and looked back at her with a slight smile. Don't cry out of joy when you get it. Saying this much, Jinwoo walked away from there. Raising a hand toward his summons standing far away, he returned to training again. Ajin silently watched him go. For some reason, everything felt a little strange to her. She sat straight on the bench, looking blankly ahead. The exhausted shadow elf lay stretched out in her lap. Just then, a thought came to her mind. She felt that her brother was no longer like before. A week later, a red-colored portal was opened near a building. Nearby, 2 employees wearing suits were taking out a jacket from a storage case placed next to a parked car. Byung-jin lifted it up proudly and showed it. What is this? From now on, you will have to wear this very gear in every daily dungeon, Jia replied immediately. Jinwoo wore that jacket. From behind, Byung-jin started adjusting it, while Jia kept explaining further ahead. The first product of the Ubeek agency is information. Information. Several floating screens began to appear all around them. Locked dungeon clear videos. Members only access. A lot of earnings, Jia pointed towards them. We will sell dungeon clear videos at a premium price. Then she looked at the gear worn by Jinwoo. And for this we need this very modern equipment. The small device attached to the jacket got activated. Instantly, the tablet kept nearby started showing live footage. Jinwoo touched the recording device with his hand. Footage recorded from different angles began to appear on several screens. After wearing this, everything around you will be recorded in full 3D. Jinwoo touched the front part of the vest. Clear surprise appeared on his face, and it is quite light and flexible too. Standing nearby, Byung-jin adjusted his glasses, then he checked his gear once too. In a short while, everyone was completely ready. Wearing sunglasses and recording gear, they stood waiting near the red portal. The preparation for recording was complete. On the other side, Jinwoo was feeling more nervous than expected. To tell the truth, he had more tension about this recording than going inside the dungeon. Standing in front of the portal, he gave a slight smile. Today, for the first time, I am going to a Monday dungeon. Therefore, I can't say for sure that everything will happen easily. Will it be okay? Yes, Jia nodded her head comfortably. Anyway, in the end, we will use only the best footage. Thank you. Jinwoo turned a little and bowed his head politely toward her. Then a confidence-filled smile came onto his face. By the way, if I break the national record as soon as I go inside, there won't be any problem, right? Jia blinked her eyes in surprise. Pardon. At the same time, a thought came to her mind. Just now he had said himself that maybe everything would not happen easily. So was he joking? Perhaps the pressure of the 1.3 billion won deal was more on him than her expectation. To comfort him, Jia smiled. Just go comfortably, I really have no problem. Play as comfortably as you used to play in your gamer days. Okay. Saying this much, Jinwoo stepped forward. His foot went inside the red portal. Waves of energy spread all around. The very next moment, his entire body disappeared into that swirling gate. Going inside the portal, Jinwoo started thinking in his mind. According to this, a slight smile came onto his face. Perhaps I will break this record even more easily than expected. In a split second, the environment around him completely changed. A black sky, countless broken swords scattered all around. Right in the middle of it, a glowing red room was floating. This dungeon was different from all the rest, because that was the only dungeon where attack-related runes could be obtained. Various types of different runes appeared in someone's hand. Without attack runes, players could hardly do anything. This was the reason why this dungeon was considered so valuable. Jinwoo was standing in front of a huge battlefield. Just then he understood another thing. This was a defense dungeon. Players had to survive against an undead army for 30 minutes. Under the distant black sky, skeleton soldiers were running towards them. At the same time, the national ranking board also began to appear. Why was everyone so serious about the clear time? This was the reason. The final boss stood at the very back of the battlefield, a lick wearing a hood. A glowing orb was floating in its hand. As soon as the lick was killed, the dungeon would end immediately. Jinwoo pressed the button of the recording device attached to his jacket. Instantly, a soft confirmation sound was heard. It seems the gear is working perfectly. He stood calmly and started checking the system. A blue panel opened near him. 3 different teams were displayed in it. Team A, Team B, Team C players could form 3 different teams at the same time. Jinwoo had prepared these in advance. 1 for normal content, 1 for PvP, and 1 specifically for daily dungeons. Without wasting time, he selected the daily dungeon team. Instantly, summon confirmations began to appear. One by one, several summons appeared near him. Among them was Combat Sheriff and also Minikong. A few moments later, a robe-wearing summon also appeared in front. Then amidst the glowing light, a golden fairy also appeared. In this way, his daily dungeon team was absolutely ready. Jinwoo stood with his head slightly bowed, and golden energy was spreading all around him. Just then the objective appeared, stating that the undead legion was attacking rapidly and he had to hold out until reinforcements arrived. Standing with his summons, Jinwoo was looking towards the battlefield. Just then the timer appeared, showing 30 minutes remaining. The hooded commander, rushing while riding a skeleton, extends his hand, and as black-red energy spreads behind him, countless skeletons run on the ground. Minokong beat his fists against his chest and roared loudly, sending skeletons flying in all directions. Then, grabbing a skeleton by its head, he slammed it hard onto the ground and shattered it completely while laughing. The broken skeleton lay scattered on the cracked battlefield. Jinwoo raised his hand with full confidence. His glowing summons stood behind him, and the golden fairy was hovering above. Then smiling, he just said this, "Let's go now." Floating in the air above the battlefield at the very front of the advancing undead legion was the lick, and black energy was spreading from its torn robe. Jinwoo's team stood its ground in front of the massive undead army. Tilting his head with a slight smile, Jinwoo said, "First." Just then Hangyo looked towards him, placing his hand on his sword. Hangyo sharpened his gaze. Then Jinwoo further said, "Come on, let's take the high ground first." The whole team immediately ran forward, and Jinwoo said that this was exactly like Hangyo, but seeing the recording taking place, he stopped mid-sentence. As the countdown kept running, Jinwoo kept running forward, and countless skeletons pounced towards them across the entire battlefield. Watching with sharp eyes, he estimated that it would take 2 minutes to reach there. When the skeletons started nearing them from behind, the hooded priest turned slightly to look, and Jinwoo said that they would also have to handle the mobs chasing them. Hangyo swung his sword upward and took off a skeleton's head in a single strike, while blood scattered in the air. Minokong crushed another skeleton's head in his massive palm. Then, roaring with glowing eyes, he threw it forward, which went straight through another skeleton. Watching the fight, Jinwoo smiled and said that Minokong and Hangyo were handling everything excellently. Therefore, he was glad that both were his summons. Looking ahead, he cast his gaze towards the lick standing in front of the massive undead army and said calmly, "So then," standing next to Combat Sheriff, when the summon aimed his rifle, Jinwoo ordered, "Combat Sheriff, get ready." It was shown in a demonstration that despite having low damage, Combat Sheriff's range and accuracy were amazing, because he was repeatedly targeting a very distant target. In another piece of information, it was stated that even after auto-battling continuously for 32 hours without getting a single kill, Combat Sheriff had become the MVP in lower-tier dungeons. Finally, by comparing it with the low HP lick, it was explained that the enemy's low health makes it the best target. Just as Combat Sheriff was about to fire, Jinwoo raised his hand to stop him and said, "Wait, don't fire yet." The priest joined both his hands and golden light began to gather between them. Just then Jinwoo ordered Radiance to cast Blessing. Golden energy surrounded Combat Sheriff, while Radiance continuously prayed behind him. When the lick raised both hands to form a barrier around itself, the Blessing removed its long-range immunity skill, Protective Shield of Darkness. As soon as the shield disappeared, Jinwoo smiled slightly and ordered, "Okay, start firing now." Combat Sheriff fixed his eye on the scope. Holding the rifle firmly, he aimed carefully. On the other side, Hangyo, surrounded by blue flames, rushed forward and kept cutting through the skeletons with powerful strikes. At the same time, Minokong leaped into the air, raising both fists. Meanwhile, Hangyo cut another skeleton into 2 pieces from the middle. Minokong slammed both fists onto the ground, crushing the surrounding skeletons and scattering debris in shockwaves across the entire battlefield. Despite being surrounded by skeletons from all sides, Minokong maintained the front line, while Combat Sheriff kept providing him cover from a distance. Several skeletons managed to strike Minokong's arm, causing deep wounds from which blood began to flow. Golden light began to gather between the extended hands, and the glowing energy kept increasing continuously. The golden fairy remained hovering above Radiance with both her arms spread, while he maintained the blessing with full concentration. Finally, Combat Sheriff fired, and a flash emerged from the barrel of the rifle while the empty cartridge bounced into the air. Seeing the bullet hit, Jinwoo said without changing his expression, "Just as thought." The lick tilted its head slightly and placed its claw gently upon it. Its red glowing eyes were looking ahead, and despite the HP being slightly low, Jinwoo said that compared to the other summons, its damage seemed very weak. Combat Sheriff continuously fired one bullet after another, while Jinwoo said that the lick's HP was slowly decreasing. Getting hit by continuous bullets, the lick stumbled and retreated. Its red eyes began to flicker, and it let out a terrifying scream. Black energy surged around the lick, and it spread both its arms. Just then, Jinwoo said that with such weak runes and such a low level, it would always take forever to defeat it this way. While on the other side, Minokong kept regaining his HP on the front line. Bathed in golden light, Minokong kept roaring, and his HP kept recovering continuously while he held back the incoming skeletons. And Jinwoo told that this was the reason why most players do not prefer to bring Combat Sheriff along. Suddenly, a skeleton came falling down from above, seeing which Minokong looked up in surprise. While Jinwoo was watching everything from behind, that skeleton fell straight on top of Minokong and dug its claws into his body, making the giant Minokong wince in pain due to the violent impact. The next moment, opening his jaw completely, he pounced again and let out a sharp scream. Even so, Jinwoo stood completely calm with one hand in his pocket. Stepping forward, he said that all these limitations apply only to ordinary players. Before the attacking skeleton could reach him, his sword cut its head into two halves right next to Jinwoo's face. Hangyo, standing behind Jinwoo with his sword ready, was the answer, and Jinwoo said, "Hangyo alone is enough for me." Hangyo brought his sword down with full force. Meanwhile, Jinwoo explained that Hangyo's skill unlocks his hidden power and synchronizes his runes and skills perfectly. With everything completely prepared, Combat Sheriff fired the deciding shot, and Jinwoo said that just one bullet is enough to finish a top-tier lick. The glowing bullet crossed the entire battlefield and went straight through the lick's face. Its body jerked violently backward, and black energy burst out from inside it. A few moments later, the giant lick fell backward, while the surrounding skeletons just stood there watching all this. The system immediately announced dungeon clear and showed a completion time of 4 minutes 12 seconds, while the golden fairy hovered above and all the summons gathered on the battlefield. A short while later, more messages came from the system, announcing a new record for the Republic of Korea and a special accomplishment. On the other side, Jia was standing in front of the ranking board, while her employees were gathered behind her, and she could not believe that Jinwoo had started the time attack of the Monday dungeon so quickly. Looking at the rankings, she said that it has been only 1 week since he got the summons. Therefore, even if he failed to break the record, they should encourage him. Byung-jin turned his gaze away with a worried face and agreed that she was right. Jia turned to him and asked if he really thinks that Baek Jinwoo can break the record of every daily dungeon. Stroking the back of his head, Byung-jin said that breaking the record of the Tuesday dungeon was truly amazing, but Jinwoo had not yet told how he would clear the remaining dungeons. The ranking of the Monday dungeon remained on the interface. Just then, someone said that there is no shortage of players with 1 year of experience in Korea. Therefore, it would not be wrong to think that perhaps Jinwoo was just talking big. Jia saw Byung-jin's concern and asked if he was worried. He just started looking down in stress and remained silent. Brushing her hair back, Jia said calmly that she had started this business with her own money anyway. Seeing the worry on the faces of both men, she assured them that no matter what happens, she would not let it affect their careers. Smiling with full confidence, she spread both hands and said that their salaries would not change at all either. Hearing this, both men became emotional, hugged each other, and said that they would give their whole lives to this company because this is their dream job. To which Jia smiled and said that she can make such a promise because she has the power to fulfill it. After this, narrowing her eyes, she silently started looking ahead. Over there, Jinwoo was standing, and near him, Ramba, surrounded by green energy, was floating in the air, calling out his name. Under a tree, a wooden chest covered with vines was kept. Just then, someone said that Jinwoo is hiding much more than he is showing. Smiling in front of the glowing portal, Jinwoo asked casually that if he breaks the national record as soon as he goes inside, there won't be any problem, right? To which someone said how carefree he is. A golden key was floating amidst the swirling light, and a voice came that he considers these dungeons as if they are no big deal. Back at the headquarters, Jia was looking ahead. Just then, the two men standing behind her clung to each other in shock, because suddenly someone shouted that the record had been broken. The next moment, a voice came that the beginner Monday dungeon has been cleared in just 4 minutes 12 seconds. One man leaned over the control desk while the other ran towards him, shouting that the old record has been broken by a full 3 minutes and asked who did it. Then Jinwoo's picture appeared on the interface, and it became clear that it was Baek Jinwoo. Both men kept looking at him in surprise and said that this is an exploit to the extent of madness. Standing behind, Jia said with a smile that he broke the record in the very first attempt. Raising her trembling hands, she could not believe that the plan made by her actually worked. Clenching her fist, she said that now their business is bound to succeed. Smiling with full confidence, she said that if everything keeps going like this, they have truly hit the jackpot. A while later, Jinwoo was standing in the light of the setting sun, and all his summons were present behind him. At his feet, a blue portal began to spin. Looking ahead, Jinwoo said that before logging off, he still has one more task to do. He pressed the red button on his jacket and stopped the recording. Looking towards the floating interface, he said that now the real endless grind will begin. Just then, the system panel asked if he wanted to start an auto battle with his current team. Inside the glowing daily dungeon, the summons repeatedly kept clearing stages, and the system informed that now the cleared daily dungeons can be farmed automatically. Over there, a small fairy wearing black sunglasses was watching that coins, gems, and potions were being collected automatically. Jinwoo selected yes on the interface and sent the training instructor back into the inventory. Standing in front of another interface, he called Hangyo back into the inventory as well. After this, he summoned Wind Fairy, and closing her eyes, Ramba came and started floating in front of him. Jinwoo assigned her the task of handling the grinding of the Monday dungeon, due to which Ramba started thinking in surprise why Hangyo was not doing this work. With a slight smile, Jinwoo explained that Hangyo has to train the rest of the summons. Then he asked if Ramba also wanted to take training. Hearing this, she remembered the moment when she was trembling on the ground, and Hangyo was continuously conducting strict training of the summons. Even in memories, Hangyo stood right there while his strict training continued. Suddenly, that memory shattered like broken glass. Just then, a gloved hand caught Ramba tightly. Falling on her knees in front of Jinwoo, Ramba pleaded with him that she would handle the grinding herself, and hearing her words, Jinwoo immediately agreed. Standing near the floating interface with his summons, Jinwoo said that all other daily dungeons will be cleared in this very manner. Rewards will keep coming constantly from auto battle, while the rest of the summons will continue their training. After pressing the glowing panel, he said with a smile that his fully efficient routine is finally ready. Stepping into the portal with a smile, he waved his hand towards Ramba and said, "Now everything is up to you." Raising both hands in the air, Ramba said with full confidence, "Yes, leave it to me." The red portal began to spin and Jinwoo disappeared inside it. Stepping out of the portal, he looked ahead in surprise. Teeb was already welcoming him, kneeling on the red carpet. Closing her eyes and smiling, Jia said that she trusted him from the very beginning, while Byung-jin stood nearby watching. Taking off his jacket and giving it to him, Jinwoo said that all the recorded videos are inside it. Taking the jacket, Byung-jin thanked him, while Jia assured that they would not let anything leak. Therefore, he does not need to worry about the news. Jinwoo replied that he has no problem if the new record comes out in front of everyone. Hearing his words, Jia was left surprised and said, "What?" Walking in the city while looking at his phone, Jinwoo said that instead of that, he wants them to focus on the security of his family. Jia silently kept listening to his words, while Jinwoo said that there is still the terror of gangs in Korea, but now Yu-beek is handling only that, so security will become much better than before. Closing her eyes slightly, Jia promised that if needed she would protect his family even by using the power of Desung. A short while later, Jinwoo reached a dark dungeon with high arches. A Komodo opened its mouth and swallowed the slime whole. The system announced another dungeon clear with 3 minutes 10 seconds, while Jinwoo stood with his summons. Looking down, he said that because of the recording, he deliberately made Komodo clear the dungeon, whereas at this speed, he could easily make a world record as well. Standing near the spotted and bloated Komodo, Jinwoo stated that after completely increasing the movement speed rune and Wind Falcon's speed buff, breaking the record became quite easy. Happy with the result, he smiled and stopped his jacket's recording. Walking towards the portal with his summons, he said that the recording of the Tuesday dungeon is also complete now. After this, the story reached a snowy mountain where it was informed that defense runes are obtained as rewards in the Wednesday dungeon. Stepping into the deep snow, Jinwoo introduced the dungeon. But the very next moment, he realized that the cold here was beyond tolerance. Shivering with cold, his pace slowed down, and he started complaining that he was going to die of cold. Still trying to protect himself from the cold, he extended his hand towards the blue interface and said again that he was freezing with cold. For preparation, he summoned Frost Cat and Wind Falcon. After this, he also summoned the giant titanium golem along with Pokorion. Exhaling breath in the cold air, looking at Frost Cat, Jinwoo said that having a summon with cold resistance in this dungeon is very important. Titanium Golem stood in a colossal form behind him, and Pokorion stood nearby waiting. Just then, holding his hands, Jinwoo looked towards the entire snowy field. Tearing through the snow, 3 giants ran towards them, one of whom had lifted a huge boulder. Just then, Jinwoo smiled and called Titanium Golem. After strengthening Golem's protective shield further, he called Wind Falcon and stated that its movement speed buff will take them forward very rapidly. Wind Falcon flew and sat on Golem's shoulder, and air began to spin all around it. Jinwoo climbed onto Golem's arm, Frost Cat stood near him, and Pokorion came to her place behind them. Titanium Golem, seating everyone on its shoulders, ran rapidly into the snow field. Due to sharp jerks, Jinwoo closed his eyes tightly and admitted that the ride is fun but his head is spinning badly. Over there, the giants kept advancing towards them. Just then, suddenly a huge rock was thrown towards them. A rain of sharp stones started falling from above, but Titanium Golem kept running without stopping and all the attacks kept falling around it. Watching all this from Golem's shoulder, Jinwoo said that Titanium Golem is an absolutely perfect tank. Then he stated that this is not its only specialty. Titanium Golem, taking a high leap and sending snow and icy pieces flying, hung from the edge of the cliff and climbed up along with the whole group. Jinwoo stated that using the paths through which only Titanium Golem can go saves a lot of time. Moving forward, he ordered Pokorion to be ready. Pokorion looked back nervously and sweat appeared on her face. Titanium Golem strengthened its grip on the rock and leaped upward with full force. A huge white giant appeared in front. Just then the system announced that the boss monster had arrived. That huge monster roared loudly, and icy energy began to flash all around its body. Leaning forward, Jinwoo called Wind Fairy. Wind Fairy, spinning in the air, reached above the boss while the monster got ready for the attack. As one of its huge wings advanced, Jinwoo ordered Pocoryong to attack. Pocoryong gripped her staff tightly. Flames of fire began to spin all around her and Jinwoo sat ducking behind her. A massive giant attack of fire emerged from her staff and moved straight towards the boss. With a terrible explosion, flames of fire swallowed the entire monster. Seeing the attack succeed, Jinwoo pumped his fist with joy, and as soon as the boss was defeated, the dungeon was cleared in 4 minutes 22 seconds. Titanium Golem sat on its knees in the snow, while Jinwoo started looking at the system panel among the summons standing all around him. Smiling with satisfaction, he said that this is another new record, but the effect of the long and tiring ride finally started showing on him. Sweat began to flow from his face, and the very next moment, he leaned over and started vomiting while his summons kept looking at him in surprise. The news of this achievement spread instantly, and everywhere this news started getting printed that a new national record has been made in 4 minutes 22 seconds. Reading the article on his phone, a man slowly repeated Jinwoo's name. A woman looking at her phone recognized him and said that this is the same player who had broken the Tuesday dungeon record earlier. Over there, a single question was printed in newspapers everywhere. After all, who is Baek Jinwoo? On the other side, a woman asked who this Baek Jinwoo is. Just then, a boy reminded that this is the same player who had posted online about breaking Kang Jun-ho's record. He remembered that incident and asked in surprise whether he broke another record. 2 boys kept talking about this news, one of whom was looking at a phone, while the other spoke in surprise that Jinwoo broke Kang Jun-ho's record again. Showing the smartphone with Jinwoo's news, someone said that Baek Jinwoo does not even look like any ranker. The headlines of newspapers flying in the air were telling that Baek Jinwoo is continuously breaking daily dungeon records, and he has come forward suddenly like a comet. In the new headlines, it was stated that Baek Jinwoo has broken the Wednesday dungeon time attack record too, and people, calling it an incredible and never-seen-before feat, were discussing only player Baek Jinwoo. A hand stopped on that newspaper, whose headline was whether Baek Jinwoo will break the Thursday dungeon record as well. An elderly man sitting at his desk asked if this is Baek Jinwoo, and the secretary standing near him with a tablet informed that this is the same person whom examiner Park Chang-seok had mentioned earlier. Turning towards the secretary, the director asked if this is the man who spoke about giving information in exchange for summons and whom examiner Im Hee-soo had opposed. A smiling picture of Im Hee-soo appeared, and the secretary confirmed saying that yes, this is the same person, and at that time, they had refused to give him anything without getting the information first. Leaning back in his chair, the director admitted that after all, the information given by him turned out to be true, and now it seems so. After this, he slowly took a long breath. 2 shadows with broad smiles emerged behind him. Just then, it was told in the narration that at that time, examiner Im Hee-soo's thinking was not entirely wrong either. But the narration further said that in politics, after all, only results matter. The director raised his hand without hesitation, and colorful papers began to rain all around him, while it was told in the narration that if they had supported Baek Jinwoo, they would have received not only people's praise but also much more votes. Resting his head on one hand, the director spoke that Im Hee-soo has really lost her mind and rejected a golden opportunity that came by itself. Looking towards the tablet, the secretary replied to the director's words. The director ordered him to try to contact player Baek Jinwoo once again. Surprised, the secretary asked if this time they would contact from their side themselves. The director said that earlier he thought that all this was a lie, but in the end, everything turned out to be true. Narrowing his eyes, he said that at any cost, they have to contact Baek Jinwoo. Meanwhile, it was told in the narration that runes are obtained as rewards in the Monday and Wednesday dungeons. Then it was told that polishing agents are obtained from the Tuesday dungeon. A while later, Jinwoo and Hangyo emerged from a portal, surrounded by blue energy, and started looking towards the rocky area spread in front. A glowing book was floating in a golden light. Just then, it was told in the narration that the reward of the Thursday dungeon is skill books, but a summon's unique skill could not be obtained from those skill books, nor could those latent ability skills be obtained from them which only an instructor could unlock. Still, many other useful skills were found there. Therefore, clearing that dungeon was completely beneficial. For this very reason, now Jinwoo did not need to clear the Sunday dungeon repeatedly. It was told in the narration that skill books are obtained from both Sunday and Thursday dungeons, but the Thursday dungeon is quite easy. There was no need to farm the Sunday dungeon repeatedly now. Therefore, Jinwoo decided that he would rest on Sunday. Suddenly, without any warning, the ground cracked violently, and along with several alerts, the arrival of the boss monster was announced. A giant like a huge stone stood in front of Jinwoo. Just then, it was told in the narration that this dungeon pushes players directly into a deadly boss battle. After this, it was told in the narration that this boss's defense was very high. Usually the strategy was to first use the B-rank White Wolf, having a defense reduction skill, and then attack. But Jinwoo just smiled and stepped forward to touch the glowing blue system panel. Standing in front of his summons, he casually kept operating the system panel. At the same time, a huge fist of stone came crashing down with tremendous force and debris flew all around. Then the giant foot of the golem came onto the ground, and even more stones scattered all around. Still standing amidst the golden aura, Jinwoo remained completely calm because it was told in the narration that if the damage is very high, all the moves of the boss become useless. After this, he admitted that he cannot sell this video. Using his chibi version wearing a chef's outfit, he jokingly said that he is just beating the boss mindlessly with the elite squad. Closing his eyes, he decided that he would tell people to first reduce the boss's defense with White Wolf, and then finish it off with a heavy damage combo. The huge titanium golem leaned over Jinwoo and his summons. Just then he said that there are some more useful tips to break the record. Standing on top of titanium golem, and looking towards the roaring earth golem, Jinwoo stated that the boss's head is its biggest weakness, and this is the reason why he chose titanium golem. Titanium golem and earth golem stood face to face, while stones kept falling continuously between them. Falcon spread its wings, and spinning energy began to gather all around it. Ramba raised her staff, and green glowing energy spread all around her entire body. Extending his hand, Jinwoo called Pokoryong and Hangyo. Pointing towards Earth Golem, he ordered both to target its head. Titanium Golem's huge fist collided directly with Earth Golem's fist, and an explosion of stones occurred all around. A few moments later, Earth Golem's hand was cut off and separated, and its large stones flew into the air. Hangyo sat calmly on the Golem's shoulder, holding his sword in his hand. As soon as he put his sword back into the scabbard, the Earth Golem standing behind him became completely still for a few moments. The next moment, the entire Earth Golem was cut into two halves in a clean strike, and massive stones scattered into the air. Up in the sky, Pokoryong was floating in the air and she had raised her staff above her head, all around which flames of fire were spinning. Her face became serious, and the burning energy began to tighten around her staff. The very next moment, a massive wave of fire took the form of a roaring dragon and surged forward. The burning dragon collided directly with the Earth Golem and completely enveloped it in fire. The Earth Golem collapsed onto the ground. Black smoke began to rise from its broken body, and burning stones scattered across the entire battlefield. Pokoryong stepped forward and her heel came to a firm stop on the ground. The system panels appeared and announced that the boss had been defeated, and the dungeon was cleared in 5 minutes 10 seconds. Looking at the glowing screen, Jinwoo smiled and said that he cut off a full 1 minute from Korea's national record. Watching Hangyo running on the battlefield from behind, Jinwoo admitted that Hangyo is truly way too overpowered, but even so he will not use him in the Thursday dungeon team. After this, Hangyo shifted his sword to his side and turned his head slightly. Narrowing his eyes and looking ahead, Jinwoo thought that if only Pokoryong's training goes right. Looking at the smiling Pokoryong holding her staff with both hands, he said that then even the top-tier dungeons would be cleared in a second. He affectionately stroked Pokoryong's head and praised her, saying that she did a great job. Then he added that combining the time to enter and exit the dungeon, the entire run would be only about 10 seconds. Hangyo silently began to look upward, while Ramba hovered in the air behind his shoulder. Looking at the massive rocky ruins standing in front, Jinwoo said, "Come on, one more time." A while later, Jinwoo, with both hands in his pockets, came out of the glowing blue portal. Just then, a man coming toward him asked, "Are you player Baek Jinwoo?" Standing in front of both the men wearing suits, Jinwoo calmly said that he is indeed Baek Jinwoo. One of them extended his business card and informed that they have come from the director's direct secretariat. Looking at the card held in his hand, Jinwoo nodded and accepted the fact. Then he asked for what purpose they had come here, because he thought that all his talks with the headquarters had already ended before. The man wearing a suit smiled and said that they re-examined the proposal given by Jinwoo, and now after seeing its results, they are looking at it with a good perspective. Understanding their point, Jinwoo just said, "Oh, that matter." After this, he casually raised a hand toward them, which instantly made both men tense up. With a slight smile, Jinwoo signaled them to leave and said to forget about this matter now. Both men stopped right there in surprise, and from the mouth of one of them, only this much came out, "Pardon." Bowing his head slightly and smiling, Jinwoo repeated their own words that they decided to think again after seeing the results. At that same moment, Yujia's 1.3 billion offer flashed through his mind, and remembering the director's talk about a review, Jinwoo began to think that they have just sugar-coated things and they are completely opposite to Yujia. With sweat on his face, the man wearing a suit asked hesitantly. So Jinwoo calmly said that he has already joined an agency, therefore, for any business talk, they should speak with Baek's Yujia. Jinwoo walked away from there. Just then, one of the men standing behind softly said goodbye to him and then mumbled, "Baek." Watching Jinwoo walk away with his head lowered, one of the men standing behind asked what Baek actually is. The brown-haired man then asked if Yujia has any connection with the Daesung group. Narrowing his eyes, the other man said that they would have to investigate this as soon as they reached back, because he felt that a very big opportunity had slipped out of their hands. A short while later, Baek Jinwoo's chat window opened in which countless messages were visible, and in one of them it was written, "I loved you, Baek Jinwoo." In response, Jinwoo sent only a middle finger emoji and immediately left the chat. Under the shining sky, the view of the entire city stretched out far away. Standing alone on the open roof, Jinwoo looked down slightly, smiled, and said that the distance here would be fine. After this, it was told in the narration that the Friday dungeon was completely different from all the daily dungeons so far. In the rest of the daily dungeons, summons fought the monsters, but in the Friday dungeon, the player himself had to run and clear it. With a serious face, Jinwoo extended his hand, touched the system panel, and decided that he should start practicing right from now. After this, he pressed the summon button. In just a few moments, blue energy began to swirl above him, and he summoned a B-rank Sky Wyvern. Looking down with calm eyes, Jinwoo looked at the protective shield forming all around his body. Looking down from the roof of the high building above the city, he thought that even though the shield would not let him die upon falling, it still looks very scary. The Wyvern lowered its head toward him. Just then, Jinwoo called it, "Sky." He extended a hand and affectionately placed it on the Wyvern's nose. Smiling and climbing onto its back, Jinwoo asked if it was ready. Then he said, "Come on, let's go to the East Sea." Sky Wyvern immediately flew toward the sky, and Jinwoo firmly gripped its back. As the strong wind hit his face, he closed his eyes out of fear. But the very next moment, he opened them again. Leaning forward on the Wyvern's back and looking at the city spread below, a wow came out of his mouth on its own. Smiling with excitement, Jinwoo admitted that this is way more fun than his expectation. As the Wyvern began to fly rapidly over the city, Jinwoo leaned forward and shouted, "Okay, let's go." A while later, the scene reached the seashore of Yangyang. Standing in front of his summons on the sea beach, Jinwoo heard one of them calling him "my lord." Hangyo spoke with excitement that Jinwoo's natural talent for flying is truly amazing. Jinwoo politely said that it is nothing special, but Hangyo insisted that he is completely serious. Just then, Pokoryon came forward and she too agreed with his words. Holding a dolphin tightly with dizzy eyes, Pokoryon stated that when they had learned to ride a wyvern for the first time, they too had a very difficult time. At that same time, Hangyo was shown clinging to a flying wyvern to save his life, while Jinwoo stated that during the Battle of Summoners, both Hangyo and Pokoryon had ridden wyverns and dolphins. Holding her staff and smiling happily, Pokoryon kept praising him. Jinwoo smiled and thanked her for her praise. Nearby, below the words written, "Favorite controversy," a small, exhausted Hangyo appeared. Looking ahead with a slight smile, Jinwoo spoke. Anyway, standing with everyone looking toward the sea, Jinwoo said that now they will practice riding the sky dolphin. And someone immediately replied, "Yes." Pokoryon and Hangyo were standing together, smiling. Just then, Jinwoo said that learning from experienced riders like them would be the fastest way. Then he said that he has high expectations from both of them, to which both replied confidently, "We will try our best." Several days later, the scene changed into a structured field made of large, colorful blocks. Jinwoo was standing near the Friday Dungeon's portal on the grid-like ground. He lowered his head slightly. With a confident smile, he extended one hand and said, "Wind Falcon." Just then, a 10-second countdown to reach the destination began. The blue falcon began to fly, spreading its wings in the air, and spinning energy began to gather all around it. Just then, Jinwoo asked it to give a movement speed buff. In a pre-prepared posture, Jinwoo leaned onto the starting line, placing one hand on the ground, while energy like blue wind was spinning all around him. On the countdown above the course, first 3, then 2 appeared, but Jinwoo still remained leaning on the starting line. As soon as the countdown reached 1, his gaze became completely sharp and focused. As soon as the go signal appeared, Jinwoo ran forward with the speed of lightning. With a bright flash, several projectiles were fired toward him. He moved forward so rapidly that his afterimage was left behind, while several projectiles passed right by him. While running, another projectile passed right next to him. Crossing the course, he stepped on the glowing tiles from which violent jolts were produced, and just then he realized that upon doing it himself, now he understood everything. Leaning forward and smiling, Jinwoo admitted that playing it himself is way more fun than playing it on a screen. Smiling carefully, he said that now the time has come to enter the first hidden route. In front, a glowing path opened above the sea, and speed lines began to rush toward it. Maintaining his confidence, Jinwoo thought that normally players would have to cross the water and run straight ahead, but he slammed his foot onto a red tile with full force. Due to that jolt, he leaped high in the air, way above the water. Extending his hand with excitement, he shouted, "Sky Dolphin." The very next moment, a blue sky dolphin surrounded by water was summoned. Jinwoo gripped the dolphin tightly with a funny expression with puffed cheeks. With a loud explosion, water splashed in all directions. Riding the sky dolphin, he moved forward under the water where fishes were swimming around him, and he understood that if he goes from under the water, all the obstacles above will be avoided. His eyes narrowed inside the water, while bubbles kept rising up past his face. As soon as the sky dolphin leapt out of the sea into the sky, Jinwoo instantly shouted, "Sky Wyvern!" Still riding the dolphin and leaving a trail of water behind, he said, "Now from here." He kicked hard on the dolphin's body. Grabbing the back of the advancing Sky Wyvern, Jinwoo shouted, "Now it's time to fly." Riding on the back of Sky Wyvern and flying straight ahead, he said that now he just has to fly over the remaining obstacles. Sky Wyvern flew straight toward the glowing round finish line. Smiling with excitement, Jinwoo shouted. Then Sky Wyvern flapped its wings. Jinwoo raised a fist in the air and crossed the finish line riding on it. With sweat and a smile on his face, he cleared the dungeon in just 2 minutes 16 seconds. Sitting on the Sky Wyvern in a chibai style and showing a peace sign, Jinwoo shouted this, breaking South Korea's national record and also achieving a special accomplishment.